Maya Carter thought her biggest problem was acing her architecture finals. She was wrong, dead wrong. When her father's gambling debts to Boston's most dangerous crime lord came due, $850,000 worth of blood money, she had 48 hours before he became a corpse. The solution? Marry the kingpin. 5 years as Mrs. Damien Crowe, the perfect wife, the perfect lie, the perfect cage. But when bullets shatter her gilded prison, and she's forced to pull the trigger herself, Maya learns that some contracts are signed in blood, and some loves are born in fire. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The phone wouldn't stop ringing. Maya Carter stared at the screen lighting up for the 7th time in 3 minutes, her father's name flashing insistent and panicked across the display. Around her, Professor Mitchell droned on about the Baroque influences in contemporary Boston architecture, his voice a distant hum against the hammer of her pulse. She never got calls during class. Her father knew that. He respected that. 7 calls meant something was catastrophically wrong. Miss Carter, is there a problem? Professor Mitchell's question cut through the lecture hall's murmur. 23 pairs of eyes swiveled toward her, curiosity bright on their faces. Maya was the quiet one, the scholarship student who sat front row and filled notebooks with precise sketches and meticulous notes. She didn't disrupt class. She didn't draw attention. Until now. I'm sorry, Maya whispered, already shoving her laptop into her bag with shaking hands. Family emergency. She didn't wait for permission. Didn't wait for the dismissal she could feel hovering on Mitchell's lips. She just ran, out of her seat, down the auditorium steps, through the heavy double doors that banged shut behind her like a gunshot. Her sneakers squeaked against polished hallway floors as she fumbled with her phone, finally pressing it to her ear. Dad? Dad, what's... Maya? Her father's voice cracked around her name, raw and terrified in a way that turned her blood to ice. Maya, baby, you need to come home. Right now, please. I'm so sorry. The line went dead. Maya's apartment was 40 minutes away by subway, 20 if she caught a cab and traffic cooperated. She made it in 15, her heart a war drum against her ribs, her mind spinning through worst-case scenarios that somehow still fell short of the truth waiting for her. The door to their third-floor walk-up hung open. Not ajar, not unlocked. Open, as if someone had kicked it in and hadn't bothered to close it behind them. Maya's hand trembled as she pushed it wider, revealing the wreckage of what used to be home. The living room looked like a tornado had torn through it with personal vendetta. The coffee table lay overturned, its glass top shattered into glittering shards across hardwood floors. Books scattered everywhere. Her architecture texts, her father's mystery novels, photo albums split open with pictures of her mother's smiling face trampled underfoot. The television hung at a broken angle, screen spiderwebbed with cracks. Couch cushions gutted, their stuffing pulled out in white clouds, chairs broken, lamps smashed. And in the center of it all, crumpled on his knees with blood streaming from his nose and a cut above his eye, was Ethan Carter. Dad! Maya dropped her bag and crossed the destruction in 3 strides, falling to her knees beside him. Her hands hovered, afraid to touch, afraid of causing more damage to a man who already looked shattered beyond repair. His left eye was swelling shut, purple blooming across the socket. His lips split, knuckles scraped raw. Baby girl. His voice came out thick, distorted by the blood and the crying he was trying to hide. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I didn't think... Who did this? Maya's voice came out steady even as her hand shook, already reaching for her phone to call 911. Dad, who... No! Ethan's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist with surprising strength. No police, no hospitals, Maya, please. You can't. They'll know. His breath hitched. They'll kill me. The words hung in the air like poison. Maya felt the world tilt sideways, reality shifting into something unrecognizable. Her father, quiet, bookish Ethan Carter, who taught high school math and did crossword puzzles on Sunday mornings, was kneeling in their destroyed apartment saying someone wanted to kill him. Start talking. Maya's voice came out harder than she'd ever heard it. Right now. Everything. Ethan's face crumpled. For a moment he looked ancient, decades older than his 52 years, worn down by secrets that had finally crushed him under their weight. When he spoke, the story spilled out in fragments, broken pieces of a truth Maya had never suspected. Before he was a teacher. Before he was her father. The man who raised her alone after cancer took her mother 6 years ago. Before any of that, Ethan Carter had been someone else entirely. A bookkeeper. An accountant. For people who didn't report their income to the IRS. It was supposed to be temporary, Ethan whispered, his good eye fixed on the floor like he couldn't bear to meet Maya's stare. After your mom got sick, the medical bills, insurance didn't cover everything. We were drowning. A friend of a friend knew someone who needed numbers managed, no questions asked. The money was good, really good. I told myself just until we got back on our feet. Maya's throat tightened. What kind of numbers? The kind that don't show up on tax returns. Ethan's laugh was bitter, self-loathing. Protection rackets, loan sharking, money laundering through legitimate businesses. I kept 2 sets of books. One for the feds, one for the real operations. I knew what I was doing was wrong, but your mother was dying, and you needed... His voice broke. I got out after she passed. Clean break. Or so I thought. Dad, I started gambling. The confession came out in a rush, words tumbling over each other. After your mom died, I couldn't sleep. Couldn't think. The grief was, I went to the casino to feel something else. Anything else. At first I won. God, Maya, at first I won so much I thought maybe the universe owed me this. Maybe this was my compensation for watching your mother waste away. Maya already knew how this story ended. She could see it in the wreckage around them, in the terror etched into her father's battered face. I lost it all, Ethan continued. Everything. And then I kept losing. I borrowed from the casino, then from loan sharks, then from... He swallowed hard. Then from the same people I used to work for. They gave me credit because they remembered me, because I'd been useful once. I thought I could win it back. I thought, how much? The question came out flat, clinical. Maya felt like she was watching this conversation from outside her body, floating somewhere near the ceiling, while a stranger wearing her face sat in the ruins of her childhood home. Ethan flinched. Including interest? $850,000. The number landed like a physical blow. Maya actually rocked back on her heels, the air punched from her lungs. $850,000. Nearly $1 million. The kind of debt that didn't get forgiven. The kind of debt that got people killed. I sold your mother's inheritance, Ethan said quickly, desperately, like confession could somehow fix this. The house her parents left her. Got $200,000 for it. I was going to tell you, baby, I swear, but I needed to... That was supposed to be mine. Maya's voice sounded distant, even to her own ears. Mom made you promise. After she died. She made you promise you'd give me that house when I turned 21. I was going to sell it for graduate school. I know. Tears streamed down Ethan's face, mixing with blood. I'm a thief and a liar and a coward. But Maya, I had to try something. The people I owe, they're not patient. They're not understanding. The knock on the door was polite, almost friendly. 3 sharp raps, precise and measured, like someone calling on neighbors to borrow sugar. But the sound made Ethan go rigid, all color draining from his face until even his lips looked gray. 48 hours, he whispered. They gave me 48 hours to come up with the rest. That was... He checked his watch with shaking hands. That was 47 hours ago. The knock came again, same rhythm, same casual confidence. Maya stood slowly, her legs unsteady beneath her. She crossed to the door, ignoring her father's whispered pleas to stop, to hide, to run. She looked through the peephole. 2 men stood in the hallway. Both wore expensive suits, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, the kind that cost more than Maya's entire semester tuition. Both had the kind of build that said they worked out not for health, but for violence. Both smiled like they were selling insurance. The one on the left was older, maybe 40, with silver threading through dark hair and a scar bisecting his left eyebrow. The one on the right looked barely older than Maya, baby-faced and blue-eyed, his pleasant expression somehow more terrifying than any scowl could be. Maya opened the door. Miss Carter. The older man's voice was cultured, educated, warm as poisoned honey. What a pleasure. I'm Marcus. This is Joel. We work for Mr. Crow. May we come in? It wasn't really a question. Maya stepped aside. The 2 men entered with the casual confidence of people who owned whatever space they occupied, their eyes sweeping across the destroyed living room without surprise or concern. They'd seen this before. Probably caused it. Mr. Carter. Marcus's smile didn't waver as he turned to Ethan, who had struggled to his feet and now stood swaying, one hand braced against the wall. I trust you've had time to consider our employer's generous terms? I need more time. Ethan's voice came out strangled. Please, I'm working on it. I just need... Time, Marcus interrupted gently, is the one thing Mr. Crow is no longer offering. The deadline was clear. The consequences were explained. You had 48 hours to produce $650,000. That window has now closed. I can get it, Ethan said desperately. I'll sell. There has to be something. There isn't. Joel spoke for the first time, his young voice incongruously cheerful. We already checked. You're tapped out, Mr. Carter. No assets, no collateral, no friends willing to vouch for you. You're what we call a bad investment. Maya watched Marcus reach into his jacket. Her heart stopped. But instead of a weapon, he withdrew a phone. Sleek, expensive, the screen already glowing. Mr. Crow would like a word, Marcus said, extending the device toward Ethan. Ethan took it with trembling hands, pressing it to his ear. Maya watched her father's face cycle through emotions, fear, shame, desperation, as he listened to whatever voice spoke on the other end. The call lasted less than 30 seconds. When Ethan lowered the phone, his hand shook so badly he nearly dropped it. He wants to see her, Ethan whispered. Tomorrow. Alone. See who? Maya's voice cut through the room like a blade. 3 pairs of eyes turned toward her. Marcus's smile widened. Joel's pleasant expression never flickered. Ethan looked like he might vomit. You, Miss Carter, Marcus said smoothly. Mr. Crow has a business proposition, one that might solve everyone's problems. No, Ethan's voice cracked. No, Maya, you can't. I won't let you Let me? The laugh that escaped Maya's throat sounded foreign, edged with hysteria she couldn't quite suppress. Let me? Dad, you lost the house Mom left me. You gambled away nearly $1 million. You brought criminals to our door. You don't get to let me do anything anymore. The words hung brutal and true in the space between them. Ethan flinched like she'd struck him. Miss Carter makes an excellent point. Marcus produced a business card from his pocket. Heavy stock, embossed lettering, an address in Boston's most exclusive district. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., don't be late. Mr. Crow values punctuality. And if she doesn't come? Maya heard herself ask. Joel's smile finally changed, stretching into something that showed too many teeth. Then we'll be back for your father, and we won't be as pleasant as we were today. They left as smoothly as they'd arrived, closing the broken door behind them with exaggerated care. Maya stood frozen, the business card burning in her hand like a live coal. Damian Crow, CEO, Crow Industries. Below the title, an address that made Maya's stomach drop. She recognized the building, 53 stories of steel and glass overlooking Boston Harbor, the kind of real estate that screamed money and power and untouchable legitimacy. You're not going. Ethan crossed to her, grabbing her shoulders. Maya, listen to me. These people, Damian Crow, he's not what he pretends to be. The real estate, the nightclubs, the restaurants, it's all a front. Underneath, he runs half the crime in this city. Drugs, weapons, protection, everything I used to help him hide. You can't. What choice do I have? Maya looked up at her father, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time in her life. Not the hero who raised her alone, not the devoted teacher who helped students after school. A broken man who'd made terrible choices and dragged her down with him. We can't pay. You said it yourself. We have nothing left. So either I go talk to this man, or they kill you. Those are the options. I'd rather die than... Well, I wouldn't rather you die. The shout tore from Maya's chest, raw and ragged. You don't get to play martyr now. You made this mess. You dragged me into it. So now I'm going to try to get us out. That's what Mom would have done. She would have fixed it. The invocation of her mother's name broke something in both of them. Ethan crumpled, sinking back down to his knees, sobs shaking his shoulders. Maya stood over him, dry-eyed and numb, the business card still clutched in her hand. That night, Maya didn't sleep. She sat at her laptop in her tiny bedroom, mercifully untouched by the destruction in the living room, and researched Damian Crow. The public version was impeccable. 32 years old, self-made billionaire, orphaned at 16, built his empire from nothing, owned prime real estate across 3 states, a chain of upscale nightclubs, 2 five-star restaurants, and a venture capital firm that had its fingers in everything from tech startups to sustainable energy. Photographed at charity galas with senators and celebrities. Donated millions to children's hospitals and arts programs. But dig deeper, into forums that skated the edge of conspiracy, into news articles about unsolved crimes and mysterious disappearances, and a different picture emerged. Whispers of a shadow empire, rumors of violence wrapped in expensive suits, stories of rivals who crossed him and ended up ruined, imprisoned, or dead. No proof. Never any proof. Just patterns that repeated too consistently to be coincidence. And photographs. Dozens of them from society pages and business journals. Damien Crowe in a tuxedo, accepting a humanitarian award. Damien Crowe shaking hands with the governor. Damien Crowe at restaurant openings, charity auctions, gallery exhibitions. Maya studied his face until it burned into her memory. Sharp cheekbones and a jaw that could cut glass. Dark hair swept back from a face too handsome to be trustworthy. Eyes that looked black in most photos, cold and calculating and utterly devoid of mercy. Even when he smiled for the camera, those eyes stayed flat. Dead. This was the man who held her father's life in his hands. This was the man she had to face tomorrow. Maya closed her laptop as dawnlight crept through her window, painting her room in shades of gray and gold. She'd made a decision somewhere in those sleepless hours, though she couldn't pinpoint the exact moment clarity had crystallized from chaos. She would go. She would meet Damien Crowe. She would hear his proposition. And if there was any way at all, to save her father without destroying herself, she would take it. Because that's what you did for family. Even when they didn't deserve it. Even when they'd betrayed you. Even when every instinct screamed to run and never look back. You tried to fix it. The next afternoon, Maya stood outside Crowe Industries at 1:55 p.m., her hands steady despite the nausea churning in her gut. She'd dressed carefully, the nicest clothes she owned, a simple black dress and blazer that said professional, competent, not easily intimidated, even if all three were lies. The building loomed above her, all reflective glass and sharp angles, beautiful and cold as a blade. Through the revolving doors she could see a lobby of marble and steel, security guards in crisp uniforms, people in designer suits moving with purpose. Maya took a breath, squared her shoulders, walked inside. Maya Carter for Mr. Crowe, she told the receptionist, a woman with perfect makeup and a smile sharp enough to draw blood. 2 o'clock appointment. Of course. Top floor, private elevator on your left. The elevator was brass and mirrors, rising so smoothly Maya barely felt the motion. But her ears popped as floor numbers ticked higher, 20, 30, 40, 50, until the doors opened onto a space that stole her breath. The penthouse office was more art gallery than workspace. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Boston Harbor, sailboats cutting white lines through blue water, the city spreading out in all directions like a kingdom laid at someone's feet. The furniture was minimalist and expensive, leather and chrome and dark wood. Abstract paintings hung on walls painted the color of smoke. Everything designed to intimidate, to remind visitors of the wealth and power concentrated in this single room. And behind a desk of black marble, backlit by the harbor view like some dark angel, sat Damien Crowe. The photographs hadn't done him justice, or maybe they'd been too kind. In person, he was both more beautiful and more terrifying than any image could capture. The suit was bespoke, black on black, fitted to a body that moved with predatory grace as he stood. Tall, easily 6'2", maybe more, broad-shouldered, the kind of build that said discipline and violence in equal measure. But it was his face that held Maya frozen, sharp and cold and perfect, like something carved from marble by a sculptor who'd never learned to depict warmth. And those eyes, not black, she realized now, but the darkest brown she'd ever seen, so deep they swallowed light. They fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Miss Carter. His voice was low, controlled, textured like expensive whiskey. Thank you for coming. Please, sit. It wasn't a request. Maya crossed the expanse of the office, her footsteps muffled by carpet that probably cost more than her yearly tuition. She sat in the chair across from his desk, leather, ergonomic, positioned precisely so the light from the windows would hit her face while leaving his in shadow. Power dynamics built into furniture placement. Damien settled back into his own chair, steepling his fingers as he studied her with the focus of a scientist examining a specimen. "Your father owes me a considerable sum," he said without preamble. "I assume he's explained the situation?" $850,000. Maya was proud that her voice didn't shake. "Including interest." "Correct, of which he's managed to pay $200,000 through the rather desperate sale of property that didn't actually belong to him." Damien's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those dark eyes. "My understanding is that house was your inheritance. My condolences." "I didn't come here for sympathy." "No. You came because your father is a gambler and a thief and a coward, and you're trying to save him from the consequences of his own stupidity." Damien leaned forward, elbows on the desk. "Admirable. Foolish, but admirable." Maya's hands clenched in her lap. "What do you want?" "Direct. I appreciate that." Damien's smile was a brief, sharp thing that never reached his eyes. "Your father seems to believe I'm interested in extracting payment through your services. Manual labor, perhaps, or other physical contributions." Heat flooded Maya's face. I'm not interested in your body, Miss Carter." The words were clinical, almost bored. "I have no shortage of willing participants for such diversions. What I need from you is far more valuable." He stood, moving to the windows, his silhouette dark against the harbor view. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight that made Maya's pulse spike. "I need a wife." The words hung in the air between them, impossible and insane. "Excuse me?" "Not a real one, obviously." Damien turned, his expression unreadable in the backlight. "A performance, a public fiction, but one that must be absolutely convincing." Maya's mind raced, trying to process what she was hearing. "You want to pay off my father's debt? With a fake marriage?" "I want to neutralize a significant threat to my operations through a strategic alliance that appears, to outside observation, to be a love match." Damien moved back to his desk, pulling out a leather folder. "I have rivals, Miss Carter, men who would very much like to see my empire crumble. One in particular, Kellen Voss, has been making moves, buying loyalty, building coalitions, looking for weaknesses to exploit." He slid a photograph across the desk. Maya picked it up, studying the image of a man maybe 40 years old, handsome in a brutal sort of way, with cold eyes and a smile that promised violence. "Voss recently lost his wife to cancer," Damien continued. "He's using the sympathy to position himself as more human, more relatable than me. Meanwhile, whispers circulate that I'm unstable, paranoid, isolated, a tyrant with no attachments, no weaknesses, no reason to play by civilized rules. And a wife changes that? A wife, the right wife, changes everything." Damien's eyes never left hers. "You're young, beautiful, accomplished, a scholarship student at one of the best architecture programs in the country. No criminal connections, no scandals, the daughter of a high school teacher. On paper, you're exactly the kind of woman who would never touch someone like me." "Which is true," Maya said flatly, "which makes the story perfect." Damien's smile was predatory. The powerful man reformed by the love of a good woman, the innocent girl who sees past the rumors to the human underneath. It's a narrative that sells, that builds sympathy, that makes me appear stable, grounded, civilized. You want me to lie to the entire city. I want you to play a role. In exchange, your father's debt is forgiven, all of it, and you both walk away alive." Maya's laugh was sharp, bitter. "That's it? Just pretend to love you and my father is free?" "Not quite." Damien opened the folder, withdrawing a contract so thick it could double as a weapon. "The terms are specific. You will move into my home. You will attend events at my side. You will learn to play the part of Mrs. Crow with perfection, wardrobe, mannerisms, social graces. You will make public appearances, grant interviews when necessary, and maintain the fiction of our relationship in all circumstances." He slid the contract toward her. Maya stared at it like it might bite. "Duration?" she heard herself ask. 5 years. 5 years. Nearly a quarter of her life. 5 years of pretending, performing, living a lie. "I'd have to leave school," Maya said slowly. "No. You'll continue your education. I'll ensure you have transportation, security, and whatever resources you need. Your academic career may even benefit from the association. My foundation awards several architecture scholarships annually. How generous! The sarcasm dripped from Maya's words. Damien's expression didn't change. I'm many things, Miss Carter. Generous is rarely one of them. This is a transaction. Your compliance and performance in exchange for your father's life and freedom. Nothing more. And after 5 years, we stage a quiet, amicable divorce. You receive a settlement, enough to ensure you'll never need to work unless you choose to. You rebuild your life. I move on to whatever serves my interests next. Maya's hands trembled as she picked up the contract. The legal language was dense, complex, but certain phrases jumped out. Exclusivity clause, public appearance requirements, non-disclosure agreements that would legally bind her silence about Crow's business operations for the rest of her life. What if I refuse? She asked quietly. Damien's pause was calculated, deliberate. Then your father has 48 hours to produce $650,000. When he inevitably fails, my people will visit him again. The next visit will be his last. You'd kill him. I'd make an example of him. Damien's voice was matter-of-fact, describing weather. Not personally. I don't get my hands dirty anymore. But yes, Miss Carter, your father would die. And his death would send a message to every other debtor, every other person who thinks they can steal from me without consequences. The casual certainty in his words made Maya's blood run cold. This wasn't a threat. It was a statement of fact, a business decision already made, waiting only for her answer to determine which branch of probability would manifest into reality. I need time to think, Maya said. You have until midnight tonight. After that, the offer expires. Maya stood on legs that didn't feel entirely steady. And my father, while I'm thinking? He'll remain untouched. You have my word. The word of a criminal. Damien's smile was winter itself. The word of a man who honors his contracts, Miss Carter. I may be many things, but I don't lie about terms. If you agree, you and your father will be protected. If you refuse... He shrugged. Well, we've already discussed that outcome. Maya turned toward the elevator, the contract clutched in her hands like a tether to reality. Miss Carter. She stopped, looking back. Damien stood silhouetted against the harbor view again, dark and powerful and utterly untouchable. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I understand this isn't fair, but fairness is a luxury neither of us can afford right now. Think carefully. Choose wisely. The elevator doors closed on his words. Maya rode down in silence, the contract feeling heavier with each passing floor. Outside, Boston moved around her, people rushing to appointments, living normal lives, unaware that somewhere in that gleaming tower, a girl's future was being bartered like commodity. Maya walked without direction, the contract burning in her hands, her mind a whirlwind of impossible choices. She could refuse. Let her father face his consequences. Walk away and build a life free from this nightmare. Or she could sign. Trade 5 years for a life. Become Mrs. Damien Crow, a fiction, a performance, a beautiful lie. By the time she reached her apartment, dusk had painted the sky in shades of purple and gold. Her father met her at the door, his face desperate with hope and fear. What did he say? Maya, what? She held up the contract. He wants me to marry him. Fake marriage, 5 years. In exchange, your debt is gone. Ethan's face went gray. No, absolutely not. Maya, you can't. I won't let you. It's not your choice anymore, Dad. Maya's voice was calm, eerily detached. It stopped being your choice the moment you stole from these people. So now I get to decide. My life. My terms. She walked past him, into her bedroom, and closed the door. Sat on her bed with the contract spread before her, reading every word, every clause, every condition that would govern the next 5 years of her life. Midnight came. Maya picked up her phone, dialed the number embossed on Damien Crow's business card. He answered on the first ring. Miss Carter, have you made your decision? Maya closed her eyes, thought of her father, thought of her mother, who'd faced death with dignity and courage. Thought of the future she'd planned, graduate school, a career, a life built on her own terms. Then she thought of her father's broken face, the blood, the terror. I'll do it, she said quietly. I'll marry you. Silence stretched across the line, then, soft as a blade sliding from its sheath. Excellent. I'll send a car for you tomorrow morning. Bring whatever you can't live without. Everything else will be provided. Mr. Crow, Damien, he corrected. If we're to be married, you should use my name. Damien. The name felt strange on her tongue. What happens to my father? He'll be enrolled in a private rehabilitation facility, the best in the state. When he's clean, he'll be given a modest apartment and a living stipend. He'll be watched, of course, to ensure he doesn't fall back into old patterns. But he'll be alive, Miss Carter. That's more than he deserves, and more than he'd have without you. And me? You become mine. The possessiveness in those words made her shiver. In public, in private, in every way that matters to the world. You'll learn quickly, or you'll suffer the consequences. I don't accept failure, Maya. Not in business. Not in this. The line went dead. Maya sat in the darkness of her room, her phone cooling in her hand, and wondered if she'd just saved her father's life or sold her own soul to a devil in an expensive suit. Outside her window, Boston glittered under stars she couldn't see through the city's light pollution. Somewhere in that landscape of steel and glass, Damien Crow stood in his tower, arranging the pieces of her life like a chess master positioning pawns. And Maya Carter, 18 years old, top of her class, a girl who dreamed of building beautiful things, closed her eyes and let the tears finally come. Tomorrow, she would become someone else. Tomorrow, her cage would be gilded. Tomorrow, the performance would begin. The black Mercedes arrived at 9 a.m. sharp, sleek and predatory as a shark, cutting through Boston's morning traffic. Maya watched it pull up from her bedroom window, her single suitcase already packed with the few possessions she couldn't abandon. Photographs of her mother, her favorite sketchbooks, the necklace her parents had given her for her 16th birthday. Everything else felt suddenly meaningless, artifacts of a life that ended the moment she'd signed Damien Crow's contract. Her father stood in the doorway, his face a roadmap of sleepless nights and guilt that would probably never fade. The swelling around his eye had gone down, but the bruises remained, purple and yellow reminders of how close he'd come to something worse than a beating. Maya, you don't have to do this. His voice cracked around the words he'd repeated a dozen times since midnight. We can run, leave the city, change our names. There has to be another way. There isn't. Maya picked up her suitcase, surprised by how light it felt. 24 hours ago, this bag had contained her entire world. Now it felt like carrying air. And even if there was, they'd find us. Men like Damien Crow don't let people run, Dad. They hunt. Then let them hunt me, not you. Maya turned, really looking at her father. He seemed smaller somehow, diminished by shame and fear until he was barely recognizable as the man who'd taught her to ride a bike, who'd sat through every school play and parent-teacher conference, who'd held her while she cried after her mother's funeral. I love you, she said quietly. But I don't forgive you, not yet. Maybe not ever. What you did, stealing Mom's house, gambling away nearly $1 million, that broke something between us, something I don't know if we can fix. Ethan's face crumpled. I know, baby girl, and I'm so... Don't. Maya held up a hand. Don't apologize again. Apologies don't fix this. Getting clean fixes this. Staying clean. Rebuilding yourself into someone who deserves forgiveness. That's the only apology that matters now. A horn sounded outside. Brief, polite, impatient. Maya moved to the door, but her father's hand on her arm stopped her. When she looked back, tears streamed down his face. Your mother would be ashamed of me, he whispered, but she'd be so proud of you. Mom would tell you to get help and mean it this time. Maya's smile was sad, broken. So do that, Dad. For her. For me. For yourself. She pulled free and walked out, leaving Ethan Carter standing alone in the apartment they'd shared since her mother died, surrounded by the ruins of the life he'd destroyed. The driver was a silent professional who took her suitcase without comment and held the door while Maya slid into leather seats that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. The car smelled like money, new leather, expensive cologne, the subtle scent of power that clung to everything in Damien Crow's orbit. They drove through Boston in silence, the city Maya had known her entire life suddenly looking foreign through tinted windows. The driver navigated away from her familiar neighborhoods, away from the campus where she should have been attending her morning lecture, toward the affluent districts where old money and new money collided in architectural displays of wealth. The Crow estate sat behind iron gates in a neighborhood where properties were measured in acres rather than square feet. The gates opened automatically as they approached, revealing a winding driveway through manicured grounds that could have passed for a private park. Trees older than Maya's grandparents lined the path, their branches creating a canopy of green that filtered sunlight into patterns of shadow and gold. And at the end of that driveway, rising from the landscape like something out of a Gothic novel, stood Damien's mansion. It was beautiful in the way dangerous things often are. All stone and glass and sharp angles, modern architecture that somehow felt ancient, built to last centuries and house secrets in every room. 3 stories of privilege and power, with wings extending on either side of a central structure crowned by floor-to-ceiling windows that reflected the morning sky. Maya's hands clenched in her lap. This was supposed to be temporary. 5 years. A contract with an expiration date. But looking at this monument to wealth and control, she felt the enormity of what she'd agreed to settle over her like a shroud. The car stopped at the front entrance. The driver opened her door, and Maya stepped out onto cobblestones that had probably cost more per square foot than her entire apartment building. "Miss Carter." Marcus materialized from the shadows of the entrance, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, his scarred eyebrow lifting in what might have been amusement or assessment. "Welcome to your new home. Mr. Crow is waiting in the east study, if you'll follow me." Maya followed because she had no other choice, her footsteps echoing across a foyer of white marble and soaring ceilings. Crystal chandeliers hung overhead like frozen waterfalls. Original artwork lined the walls, paintings she vaguely recognized from art history classes, pieces that belonged in museums, not homes. A grand staircase curved upward to the second floor, its banister carved from dark wood that gleamed under careful lighting. It was magnificent. It was terrifying. It was a cage dressed in silk and gold. Marcus led her through hallways that seemed to stretch endlessly, past rooms glimpsed through open doors. A library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a dining room with a table that could seat 20, a sitting room with furniture that looked too expensive to actually sit on. Finally, he stopped before a door of dark oak, knocked twice, and pushed it open. "Miss Carter, sir." Damien stood before a wall of windows overlooking gardens that rolled toward a distant tree line. He wore black again, it seemed to be his signature, but this time the suit was traded for slacks and a shirt with sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms roped with muscle and a single tattoo Maya couldn't quite make out. He looked more human this way, less like a corporate predator and more like a man who happened to own the world. He didn't turn as Maya entered, his gaze fixed on something outside only he could see. "Close the door, Marcus." The door clicked shut, leaving them alone. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the ticking of an antique clock somewhere in the room. "I've arranged your father's transport to the rehabilitation facility," Damien said without preamble. "He'll be picked up this afternoon. The program is 6 months, but he can stay longer if needed. You won't be able to contact him during the first 30 days. After that, supervised calls once a week. You're isolating him. I'm giving him the best chance at recovery." Damien finally turned, those dark eyes fixing on her with unsettling intensity. "Addiction thrives on enabling relationships. You want him clean? He needs to be cut off from everything familiar, including you." The words stung because they were true. Maya swallowed the protest rising in her throat. "What about me?" she asked instead. "You have a schedule to learn." Damien moved to his desk, retrieving a leather-bound folder. "Tomorrow we announce our engagement. Friday, there's a charity gala, your first public appearance as my fiancé. Next week you'll meet with a stylist, a media coach, and a social etiquette instructor. You have 9 days to transform from a college student into someone who belongs on my arm." 9 days? Maya's laugh was hollow. "To become a completely different person. You'd be surprised what desperation can accomplish." Damien's smile was sharp. "And make no mistake, Maya, you're desperate. Your father's life depends on your performance, so you'll learn quickly or you'll learn painfully. The choice is yours." He crossed to her, moving with that predatory grace that made her want to step back, to put distance between them. But Maya held her ground, refusing to show the fear singing through her veins. Damien stopped inches away, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Close enough to see the tiny scar cutting through his left eyebrow, the dark stubble shadowing his jaw, the absolute absence of warmth in eyes that studied her like a puzzle to be solved. "We need to establish rules," he said quietly. "In public, you are madly in love with me. You smile when I touch you. You lean into me when we walk. You look at me like I hung the stars just for you. Can you do that?" Maya's throat felt tight. "I can act." "Good. Because the world will be watching for cracks, for any sign this isn't real. My rivals, the media, social circles that love nothing more than tearing down anything that looks too perfect. His hand rose, and Maya flinched despite herself. But he only tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture almost tender. Almost. In private, you will be respectful. You will not question my business. You will not attempt to contact anyone from your old life without permission. You will occupy the space I give you, and no more. I'm not a prisoner. Aren't you? Damien's smile was terrible. You signed a contract, Maya. You traded your freedom for your father's life. That makes you exactly what I say you are, a very expensive acquisition who will perform as required or face consequences. His hand dropped away. Maya felt like she could breathe again. Your room is on the second floor, West Wing, Damien continued, his tone shifting back to business. You'll find appropriate clothing in the closet. Burn whatever you brought with you. You won't need it anymore. Those are my things. Those are reminders of who you used to be. Damien returned to his desk, already dismissing her. That person is gone, Maya. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be. Marcus appeared as if summoned by telepathy, opening the door. Miss Carter, if you'll follow me. Maya wanted to scream, wanted to throw Damien's words back in his face, to fight, to rage against this gilded cage closing around her. But she'd signed the contract, made her choice, traded herself for her father's life. So she followed Marcus through the mansion's labyrinth of hallways, up the grand staircase, down another corridor lined with doors that probably led to rooms she'd never see. He stopped before one, pushing it open to reveal a space that stole what little breath Maya had left. The room was larger than her entire apartment. A four-poster bed dominated the center, dressed in white linens that probably had thread counts in the thousands. Antique furniture, a vanity, a writing desk, a sitting area with a fireplace, created islands of luxury across hardwood floors covered in rugs that looked hand-woven and priceless. Windows overlooked the gardens, offering a view of perfectly manicured hedges and flower beds arranged in geometric patterns. And the closet, Maya stepped inside what could only be called a dressing room, was filled with clothes she'd never chosen. Dresses, blouses, slacks, shoes arranged by color and style. Everything designer, everything her exact size, everything chosen by someone who'd studied her measurements like battle plans. Mr. Crow employed a personal shopper, Marcus said from the doorway. If anything doesn't fit or suit your taste, simply leave it on the bed and replacements will be provided. How did he know my size? Marcus's smile was thin. Mr. Crow is very thorough, Miss Carter. I suggest you remember that. He left her alone. Maya sank onto the bed, surrounded by luxury that felt suffocating rather than comforting, and let the reality of her situation wash over her in waves that threatened to drown. This was her life now, this room, this mansion, this man who'd bought her like property and dressed her like a doll. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Dinner at 7, East Dining Room, don't be late. DC Maya looked at the message until the screen went dark, then at the room that was supposed to be hers, but felt like a very expensive prison cell. 9 days until her first public appearance. 9 days to become someone else. 9 days until the performance began. The next 48 hours blurred together in a nightmare of preparation that left Maya exhausted and hollow. The stylist arrived first, a woman named Clarissa who looked Maya up and down with the critical eye of a sculptor examining unfinished marble. Good bone structure, Clarissa murmured, circling Maya like a predator. Skin could be better, hair needs work, but we have something to build on. She spent 4 hours transforming Maya into a stranger. The haircut was dramatic. Gone were the casual waves, replaced by sleek layers that framed her face in ways that made her cheekbones look sharp enough to cut. Makeup followed, a lesson in contouring and highlighting that taught Maya how to paint on confidence, even when she felt none. Mr. Crow prefers elegance over flash, Clarissa explained, demonstrating the proper application of lipstick in a shade that looked nude but somehow made Maya's lips appear fuller, more defined. Classic beauty, timeless. You need to look like you belong in his world. Old money, good breeding, the kind of woman who was born to wear diamonds. I'm a scholarship student from a third-floor walk-up, Maya said flatly. Clarissa's smile was sympathetic but firm. Not anymore, darling. Now you're the woman who captured Damien Crow's heart. That's the only truth that matters. The media coach was worse. Gerald was British, ruthlessly efficient, and utterly unsympathetic to Maya's protests that she didn't know how to talk to cameras or reporters. "Then you'll learn," he said crisply, positioning her in front of a camera he'd set up in one of the mansion's many sitting rooms. "Rule 1, never say no comment. It makes you look guilty. Rule 2, always return to your prepared talking points no matter what question is asked. Rule 3, smile. Always smile. Even when they're asking invasive questions about your relationship, your past, your private life, you smile like you're sharing a delightful secret." They practiced for hours. Gerald firing questions at her. "How did you meet? What attracted you to Mr. Crow? Isn't the age difference concerning? What do you say to people who claim this is a business arrangement?" While Maya stumbled through answers that felt like lies coating her tongue. "Again," Gerald said after her 20th attempt, "and this time actually look like you're in love. You're talking about the man you're going to marry, not a terminal diagnosis." By the time he left, Maya's face hurt from fake smiling, and her throat was raw from repeating the same carefully crafted story. They'd met at a charity event. She'd been volunteering, he'd been speaking. Their eyes met across the room. It was immediate, electric, unexpected. He pursued her. She resisted. But love, as it does, found a way. A beautiful lie built on a foundation of extortion and debt. The etiquette instructor, a severe woman named Patricia, who'd apparently taught deportment to minor royalty, focused on the physical performance of being Mrs. Damien Crow. "Posture," Patricia barked, wrapping Maya's spine with a wooden pointer. "Shoulders back, chin level, core engaged. You are not slouching through a college campus anymore. You are entering rooms where every eye will judge you, dissect you, look for reasons to dismiss you as unworthy. Your posture must say otherwise." She taught Maya how to walk in heels, not just wear them, but walk with confidence and grace, as if she'd been born in 5-inch Louboutins. How to sit without wrinkling her dress. How to hold a wine glass, a champagne flute. How to navigate a 12-course meal with silverware that seemed designed to confuse. How to shake hands with the right amount of pressure. How to air kiss without actually making contact. How to enter a car, exit a car, stand for photographs. "When Mr. Crow touches you in public," Patricia said, demonstrating with a mannequin, "you lean into him, subtly, not desperately. You're not clutching at him for support. You're drawn to him naturally, like a flower turning toward the sun. Your body language must communicate that you belong together, that his touch is familiar and welcome." "What if it's not?" Maya asked quietly. Patricia's expression softened slightly. "Then you're a better actress than you think, dear. Because by the time this is over, everyone in Boston will believe you die for that man." The announcement came on Wednesday morning, exactly as Damien had promised. Maya woke to her phone exploding with notifications, texts from classmates she barely knew, calls from numbers she didn't recognize, emails flooding her inbox faster than she could delete them. The press release was professional, perfectly crafted. Damien Crow, CEO of Crow Industries, is pleased to announce his engagement to Miss Maya Carter, a distinguished architecture student at Boston University. The couple met earlier this year and are planning a summer wedding. They request privacy during this happy time and appreciate the well wishes of friends and family. Attached was a photograph Maya didn't remember posing for, except she had, 2 days ago, when a photographer had spent an hour capturing her and Damien in the mansion's gardens. In the image, she wore a pale blue dress that made her eyes look impossibly bright. Damien stood behind her, his hand resting on her waist, his expression softer than Maya had ever seen it in person. They looked perfect together. They looked in love. They looked like a complete fiction. Maya's phone rang. Her father's number. She answered before remembering Damien's rules about contact. "Maya, baby, I just saw. Are you okay? What the hell is happening?" "Dad." Maya glanced at her bedroom door, half expecting Damien's security to burst in and rip the phone from her hands. "I can't talk long. They're monitoring." "Monitoring? Maya, what?" "I'm fine. The engagement is part of the arrangement. It's not real. None of it is real." The words tasted bitter. "Are you packed for the facility?" "They're picking me up in an hour." Her father's voice cracked. "Maya, I'm so sorry. I'm so goddamn sorry. I never wanted—" "I know. Get clean, Dad. That's all that matters now." She hung up before he could say anything else, before the emotion in his voice could crack the careful numbness she'd built around herself. The phone buzzed immediately, a text from Damien. "My study. Now." Maya found him exactly where he'd been 2 days ago, standing before the windows like a king surveying his kingdom. But this time, when she entered, he turned immediately, his expression unreadable. "You spoke to your father." It wasn't a question. Maya's stomach dropped. "You're listening to my calls." "I monitor all communications in and out of this house." Damien moved toward her, each step measured and precise. "I warned you, Maya, no contact without permission." "He called me." "What was I supposed to do?" "Follow the rules." Damien stopped in front of her, his eyes flat and cold. "The rules exist for your protection and mine. Your father is a security risk. Until he's clean and stable, any contact with him jeopardizes our arrangement." "He's my father." "He's a gambling addict who stole from you and sold you to clear his debts." Damien's voice was surgical, cutting. "He doesn't deserve your loyalty, Maya. But since you seem determined to give it anyway, let me make this clear. You will not contact him again until I say otherwise. You will not take his calls. You will not respond to his texts. Is that understood?" Maya's hands clenched at her sides. "You don't own me." "Actually, I do." Damien reached into his jacket, withdrawing a folded document. "The contract you signed gives me authority over your communications, your movements, your public and private conduct for the next 5 years. I can restrict your access to anyone I deem a threat, including family." He handed her the document. Maya unfolded it with shaking hands, scanning the dense legal text until she found the clause he referenced. There it was, buried in Section 7, subsection C. Party B agrees to comply with reasonable restrictions on personal communications as determined necessary by Party A to protect the integrity and security of the arrangement. "Reasonable," Maya repeated, her voice hollow. "What's reasonable about cutting me off from my only family?" "What's reasonable is protecting a multi-million-dollar investment from potential compromise." Damien took the document back, refolding it with precise movements. "Your father could be picked up by rivals, questioned, threatened. Under duress, he might reveal details about our arrangement. That makes him a liability." "He would never—" "Everyone breaks eventually, Maya. Given the right pressure, the right pain, everyone talks." Damien's expression was carved from ice. "I've seen strong men crack like glass when properly motivated. Your father is not a strong man." The truth of it made Maya feel sick. Her father had already proven himself weak, gambling away their future, stealing from her, collapsing under pressure. If someone like Kellen Voss got hold of him— "The facility is secure," Damien continued, his tone softening slightly. "He'll be safe there. And when he's released, if he's stayed clean, you can rebuild your relationship under supervised circumstances. But until then, the rules stand." Maya wanted to argue, wanted to fight, but the fight had drained out of her somewhere between the etiquette lessons and the media training, between the moment she'd signed the contract and the moment she'd walked into this mansion. "Friday's gala," Damien said, switching topics with the ease of someone used to controlling conversations. "I need you ready. This is your debut, Maya. Everyone who matters will be watching." "I'll be ready." "I know you will." He moved past her toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, you looked convincing in the engagement photo. Gerald tells me you're a fast learner. Use that. Friday night, you're not Maya Carter anymore. You're the woman I'm going to marry. Play the part well, and this gets easier. Play it poorly, and we both suffer." He left her standing in his study, surrounded by wealth and power and the crushing weight of a role she had no choice but to perform. Friday arrived with the inevitability of execution day. Maya spent the afternoon being prepared like a sacrifice. Hair styled into soft waves, makeup applied with expert precision, her body poured into a gown that cost more than a semester's tuition. The dress was midnight blue, the color of deep water, cut to skim her curves without revealing too much. The neckline dipped just low enough to be elegant, the back exposed to her waist in a way that made her feel vulnerable and powerful at once. Diamonds, borrowed, she was told, from Damien's vault, circled her throat and wrists in chains of light that caught the sun and threw rainbows across her skin. She looked like someone else, someone who belonged in Damien Crow's world, someone who didn't exist. Damien was waiting at the bottom of the grand staircase when Maya descended, and for just a moment, just a heartbeat, something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. Appreciation. It vanished so quickly she might have imagined it. "You clean up well," he said, offering his arm. "So do you." It wasn't flattery. Damien in a tuxedo was devastating, all sharp lines and controlled power, his dark hair swept back, his jaw sharp enough to cut. He looked like old Hollywood and modern danger wrapped in Tom Ford tailoring. They looked, Maya realized with a sick jolt, perfect together. The gala was held at the Harborview Grand, Boston's most exclusive hotel, in a ballroom that dripped crystal and gold. The guest list read like a who's who of power: politicians, business magnates, old money aristocrats, celebrities who flew in just to be seen. Everyone dressed in their finest, everyone performing their own versions of success and influence, and everyone watching as Damien Crowe arrived with his surprise fiancée on his arm. Maya felt the weight of those stares like physical pressure against her skin. Curiosity, speculation, judgment. Women cataloging every detail of her appearance, looking for flaws. Men assessing her worth, wondering what she had that caught a billionaire's attention. Breathe, Damien murmured against her ear, his hand warm at the small of her back. And smile. You're the happiest woman in the room right now. Maya smiled, drew breath, became the performance. They moved through the ballroom like royalty, Damien introducing her to people whose names she immediately forgot, whose faces blurred together in a parade of wealth and power. Maya played her part perfectly, laughing at the right moments, leaning into Damien when he touched her, looking at him with the manufactured adoration Gerald had drilled into her. "How did you two meet?" asked a woman dripping in emeralds, her smile sharp as broken glass. "At a charity event," Maya said smoothly, the lie rolling off her tongue like truth. "I was volunteering. Damien was speaking about urban renewal projects. Our eyes met and—" She glanced at Damien, letting genuine fear masquerade as affection. It sounds like a cliché, but it really was like something shifted. "How romantic." The woman's tone suggested she found it anything but. "And the age difference doesn't concern you? Damien is what, 14 years older?" 13, Damien corrected, his hand tightening slightly at Maya's waist, a warning disguised as possession. "And maturity matters more than age, wouldn't you say, Catherine?" Catherine's smile turned brittle. "Of course. How silly of me." They escaped into the crowd. Maya's face hurt from smiling. "You're doing well," Damien said quietly, guiding her toward the bar. "But watch your micro-expressions. When Catherine mentioned our age difference, your left eye twitched. It's subtle, but observant people will catch it. Maybe because it's creepy that you're analyzing my facial tics. Maybe because I'm protecting an investment that cost me $850,000. Damien's smile never wavered, but his voice went cold. "Every detail matters, Maya. Every gesture, every glance, every word. Catherine is married to one of my biggest business rivals. She'll report everything back to her husband. If she suspects this is a performance, it jeopardizes everything." He ordered champagne, handed her a flute, his fingers brushing hers in a touch that probably looked intimate from a distance but felt clinical up close. "Who's the most dangerous person in this room?" Maya asked softly. Damien's eyes scanned the ballroom with the focus of a predator identifying threats. "Besides me, the man at 3 o'clock, gray suit talking to the senator." Maya followed his gaze, finding a man maybe 40 years old, handsome in a brutal way, with cold eyes that seemed to catalog everything they touched. Something about him made her skin crawl. "Kellen Voss," Damien said quietly, "the rival I mentioned. He's been circling my territory for months, buying loyalty, making moves. This engagement—" He lifted his champagne in a subtle toast across the room. Voss noticed, raising his own glass in return, his smile predatory. "It's partially designed to show him I'm stable, grounded, not someone who can be rattled or isolated." "And am I supposed to be your proof of humanity?" Maya kept her smile fixed, even as dread pooled in her stomach. "Something like that." Voss was moving toward them now, cutting through the crowd with purpose. Maya felt Damien's posture shift, subtle, almost imperceptible, but she'd spent enough time studying him to recognize the change. He was preparing for battle. "Damien!" Voss's voice was smooth, cultured, hiding razors behind silk. "What a surprise! I had to see the rumors for myself. You, engaged? I nearly choked on my morning coffee." "Kellen," Damien's smile was sharp. "How's business? Still buying up my competitors' scraps?" "Competitors? I prefer to think of them as future acquisitions." Voss turned his attention to Maya, his eyes traveling over her in a way that made her want to shower. And this must be the famous Maya Carter, the woman who accomplished what every socialite in Boston has failed to do, capture the heart of our city's most eligible bachelor. Former bachelor, Maya corrected, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. Of course, forgive me. Voss's smile was all teeth. I have to admit, this is all very convenient. You appear just as Damien's image needs softening. Your father's debts are suddenly forgiven. It's almost too perfect a story. The temperature dropped 10 degrees. Maya felt Damien go utterly still beside her, the stillness of a predator about to strike. Careful, Kellen. Damien's voice was soft, lethal. You're in a room full of witnesses. I'm just observing. Voss shrugged, still smiling. Publicly, of course, I wish you both every happiness. But privately? He leaned closer, dropping his voice. Everyone knows what you are, Crow. A snake in an expensive suit. This girl is either incredibly naive or incredibly desperate. I wonder which. Before Damien could respond, Maya stepped forward, closing the distance between herself and Voss until she could see the surprise flicker across his face. Neither, she said clearly, her voice carrying just enough edge to cut. I'm incredibly in love, but I wouldn't expect you to recognize that, Mr. Voss. From what I hear, the only thing you love is power. And you're terrified Damien has more of it. The silence that followed could have shattered glass. Voss's smile froze. Damien's hand found the small of Maya's back. Whether in support or warning, she couldn't tell. Then Voss laughed, the sound wrong and sharp. Well, she has teeth. How delightful. He inclined his head toward Damien. Congratulations, my friend. You found someone who matches you. He walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Maya felt her knees go weak, adrenaline draining as quickly as it had spiked. That was monumentally stupid, Damien said quietly. Or incredibly useful, Maya countered. Now he thinks I'm loyal to you. Isn't that the point? Damien's expression was unreadable as he studied her. You keep surprising me, Maya Carter. I'm not sure if that's good or dangerous. Maybe it's both. Something almost like respect flickered in his eyes. Maybe it is. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of performances. Maya smiled and laughed and played the besotted fiancé, while Damien worked the room, making connections, solidifying alliances, every conversation a chess move in games Maya couldn't see the boards of. By the time they returned to the mansion, exhaustion had settled into Maya's bones like lead. She kicked off her heels in the foyer, the marble cool against her aching feet. You did well tonight, Damien said, surprising her. Better than I expected. High praise, Maya said dryly. It is, actually. He moved toward his study, then paused. Voss will come at us harder now. You embarrassed him in front of witnesses. He won't forget that. I was defending you. Isn't that what a loving fiancé does? A loving fiancé, yes. Damien's smile was cold. But we both know what you really are, Maya, an actress playing a role. Don't confuse the performance with reality. It's a dangerous mistake. He left her standing in the foyer, his words echoing in the space between them. Maya climbed the stairs to her room, peeled off the expensive dress, washed away the makeup and hairspray until she looked almost like herself again. Almost. But the woman staring back from the mirror had harder eyes, a tighter smile, a wariness that hadn't existed a week ago. She was changing, becoming something else, someone else. And the most terrifying part was how easily the lies came now, how smoothly she could smile and touch Damien and pretend this was real. 9 days ago, she'd been a college student with dreams of building beautiful things. Now she was Mrs. Damien Crow, or would be soon enough. And somewhere in the transformation from one to the other, Maya Carter had started to disappear. The weeks that followed the gala fell into a rhythm that felt less like life and more like choreography. Maya woke each morning in her gilded room, dressed in clothes chosen by someone else, and performed the role of Damien Crow's devoted fiancé with increasing precision. Breakfast in the sunroom overlooking gardens, she wasn't allowed to walk alone. Afternoon classes at the university, flanked by security who watched from a distance but never quite disappeared. Evening events, dinners, fundraisers, gallery openings, where she smiled and touched Damien's arm and pretended her cage wasn't slowly suffocating her. She was good at it now. Too good. The lies came easier each time she told them. The performance felt more natural each night she leaned into Damien's touch, more automatic each time she laughed at his carefully crafted jokes for the benefit of watching eyes. Patricia's lessons had taken root. Maya's posture was perfect now, Her walk confident, even in impossible heels, her ability to navigate social minefields almost instinctive. But success came with a price. Maya barely recognized herself anymore when she caught her reflection in the mansion's endless mirrors. The girl who used to sketch buildings in coffee shops, who wore jeans and sneakers and pulled all-nighters in the architecture studio. That girl was fading, replaced by someone polished and perfect and profoundly empty. 3 weeks into the arrangement, Maya sat in her constitutional law lecture trying to focus on the professor's droning analysis of the Fourth Amendment when her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Car waiting outside. Mr. Crow requires your presence. Now. Maya gathered her things, ignoring the curious stares of classmates who'd started treating her differently since the engagement announcement. Part awe, part suspicion, all of it exhausting. The black Mercedes idled at the curb, Marcus holding the door with his usual inscrutable expression. "Where are we going?" Maya asked as the car pulled into traffic. Mr. Crow didn't specify, only that it was urgent. Urgent in Damien's world could mean anything from a business crisis to a wardrobe malfunction before a photo shoot. Maya had learned not to ask too many questions. The answers were rarely comforting. They drove to the financial district, pulling into the underground garage of Crow Industries headquarters. Marcus escorted her to the private elevator, his silence more unnerving than any explanation could have been. The ride to the penthouse felt longer than usual, each floor ticking past with agonizing slowness. The elevator doors opened to chaos. Damien's normally pristine office looked like a war room. 3 laptops open on his desk, their screens streaming what looked like security footage, papers scattered across every surface. And Damien himself stood at the windows, his back rigid with tension, one hand pressed against the glass like he was holding up the sky. "We have a problem," he said, without turning around. Maya's stomach dropped. "What kind of problem?" "The kind that gets people killed." Damien finally turned, and Maya felt her breath catch. His face was carved from stone, his eyes darker than she'd ever seen them, something dangerous and barely controlled simmering beneath his usual icy composure. "Kellen Voss just made his move." He gestured to the laptops. Maya crossed to the desk, studying the screens. Security footage from various angles showed what looked like a warehouse. The timestamp from early this morning. Men moving through the space with military precision, weapons visible, clearly searching for something or someone. "That's one of my distribution centers," Damien said flatly. "Or it was. Voss hit it at 4 a.m. with a team of 15. They knew exactly where to go, what to take, how to disable security. Someone on my side fed him intelligence. How much did he take? $3 million in product and cash. But that's not what matters." Damien's jaw tightened. "What matters is the message. He's not just stealing from me. He's proving he can reach into my operations whenever he wants. That I have leaks. That I'm vulnerable." Maya studied the footage, watching the invaders move through the warehouse with practiced efficiency. "So plug the leak, find whoever gave him information." "Already done. Marcus handled it this morning." Damien's tone made Maya's blood run cold. She didn't ask what "handled" meant. But that doesn't solve the larger problem. Voss is escalating. The gala embarrassment, our engagement making me look stable and strong, it's cornered him. Now he's lashing out. What does this have to do with me? Damien pulled out his phone, swiping to a photo that made Maya's world tilt sideways. It was her, leaving the university yesterday, flanked by security. But someone had drawn a red circle around her face, added text in bold letters, "Nice costume. How long before she realizes she's playing dress-up with a monster?" "This was posted on 3 different social media platforms last night," Damien said quietly, along with speculation about our relationship, questions about how a college student from nowhere ended up engaged to me, suggestions that you're either a gold digger or being coerced. Maya's hands trembled as she took the phone, zooming in on the image. Her face looked different through this lens, younger, more vulnerable, clearly out of place in the expensive clothes and sophisticated styling. "Voss is building a narrative," Damien continued, "painting me as a predator and you as my victim. If enough people believe it, if the media picks it up, it undermines everything we've built, makes me look unstable, makes our engagement look like exactly what it is, a performance. What do you want me to do about it?" We accelerate the timeline. Damien moved to stand beside her, so close she could feel the heat radiating off his body. "We were planning a summer wedding. That's too far away. We get married now this month. Make it impossible for Voss to claim this isn't real. Maya actually laughed, the sound harsh and disbelieving. You want to marry me to spite your business rival? I want to marry you to protect both our interests. Damien's eyes were hard. You think this is just business? Maya, if Voss successfully paints you as my victim, do you know what happens to victims in my world? They become targets. Leverage. Things to be taken and used and destroyed to prove a point. The threat hung between them, ugly and undeniable. You're trying to scare me, Maya said, but her voice shook. I'm trying to prepare you. Damien's hand came up, cupping her jaw in a gesture that would have looked tender to anyone watching, but felt like a warning. Voss doesn't play games, Maya. He goes for the throat, and right now you're wearing a target that says Damien Crow's weakness. I'm not your weakness. I'm your employee. In our world, there's no difference. He released her, turning back to the windows. The wedding happens in 3 weeks. I'll handle the arrangements. You just need to show up and say yes. And if I refuse? Then Voss wins. Damien's reflection in the glass looked carved from darkness. He destroys my credibility, undermines my operations, and probably makes a very public play to rescue you from my clutches. It'll be vicious and spectacular, and by the time it's over, your father will be dead and you'll wish you were. The casual way he said it, like he was discussing weather or stock prices, made Maya want to scream. 3 weeks, she heard herself say. And then what? We're actually married, legally bound. We were always going to be legally bound. That was the contract. Damien finally looked at her, his expression unreadable. The only thing that changes is the timeline, and the public perception. Speaking of which, he checked his watch. We have dinner with the mayor and his wife in 2 hours. I need you smiling and radiant and so obviously in love that no one believes Voss is poison. I need to change. Already arranged. There's a dress in my private suite. Go. He'd already dismissed her, turning back to his laptops and their streaming footage of violation and threat. Maya found the dress exactly where he'd said, a rose gold creation that probably cost more than her father's annual salary, laid out on a bed in a room she'd never entered before. Damien's private suite in the office building was smaller than the mansion, but no less luxurious, all dark wood and leather, masculine and controlled and smelling faintly of his cologne. She changed quickly, trying not to think about the intimacy of being in his space, surrounded by his things. Tried not to notice the photograph on his desk, a much younger Damien, maybe 16, standing beside an older man who had the same dark eyes and sharp features. Tried not to wonder about the person beneath the predator, the boy who'd become this man. The mayor's wife turned out to be a charming woman in her 60s who spent the entire dinner gushing about young love while her husband discussed urban development projects with Damien. Maya played her part perfectly, touching Damien's hand across the table, laughing at his stories, letting her eyes go soft when she looked at him. It should have gotten easier with practice. Instead, each performance felt like losing another piece of herself. They were walking to the car when it happened. Maya heard the engine first, revving too loud, too close, the sound wrong in the quiet street outside the restaurant. Her head turned just as Damien's arm wrapped around her waist, yanking her backward with bruising force. The sedan came around the corner doing 60, jumping the curb with a screech of metal on stone. Maya saw the muzzle flash before she heard the gunshots. 3 sharp cracks that shattered the night, bullets punching into brick where she'd been standing a heartbeat earlier. Then Damien was dragging her down, his body covering hers, pressing her into the hard ground while more shots rang out and glass exploded somewhere above them, and people screamed and chaos erupted in every direction. Stay down! Damien's voice in her ear, harsh and commanding. Don't move! Don't fucking move! Maya couldn't have moved if she'd wanted to. Terror locked her muscles, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst. She could hear shouts, more gunfire, Marcus and the other security guards returning fire, and the sedan's engine roaring as it sped away, tires squealing around corners. Then silence. Terrible, ringing silence broken only by car alarms and distant sirens, and her own ragged breathing. Damien pulled back, his hands running over her body with clinical efficiency, checking for injuries. Are you hurt? Maya, look at me. Are you hit? Maya shook her head, unable to form words. She wasn't hit. The bullets had missed, but her hands were bleeding from where she'd caught herself on the pavement, her palms shredded, her dress torn at the shoulder. Get her in the car, Damien barked at Marcus. Now, back entrance. Move. The next minutes blurred together. Maya found herself in the Mercedes, Damien beside her, his hand gripping hers so tightly her fingers went numb. Marcus drove like he was outrunning death itself, weaving through traffic while talking rapid fire into his phone, coordinating something Maya couldn't follow. That was Voss, Damien said quietly, his voice deadly calm. A warning shot. He wanted to scare you, not kill you. If he'd wanted you dead, you would be. Maya started laughing. She couldn't help it. The sound came out broken and slightly hysterical. A warning shot. Someone just tried to kill me, and you're calling it a warning shot. Because that's what it was. Damien's jaw was tight enough to crack teeth. Voss is making a point, showing he can reach you, that I can't protect you, that you're vulnerable. Well, he succeeded. Maya yanked her hand free, wrapping her arms around herself. I'm terrified. I want out. I want to go home. There is no home anymore, Maya. Damien's eyes were black pools. There's only this. Only us. Only the war you're caught in the middle of, whether you like it or not. The mansion appeared through the windshield, gates already opening. They pulled into the circular drive, and Maya stumbled out before the car fully stopped, her legs shaking so badly she nearly fell. Damien caught her, his arm around her waist, half carrying her inside. She made it to the foyer bathroom before the shock broke. Maya collapsed beside the toilet, retching until there was nothing left, her whole body trembling. Damien stood in the doorway, watching with an expression she couldn't read. When the shaking finally subsided, he knelt beside her, producing a damp cloth from somewhere and wiping her face with surprising gentleness. This is what my world looks like, he said quietly. Violence in expensive suits, death hiding behind civility. You wanted to know what you'd signed up for? Now you know. I didn't sign up to be murdered. No, you signed up to play my wife, which means you signed up to be a target. Damien helped her stand, steadying her when her legs threatened to give out. I can increase security, put more guards on you, but Maya... His hands framed her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. As long as you're mine, as long as this arrangement exists, you will never be completely safe. That's the truth I should have told you from the beginning. Why didn't you? Because you never would have agreed. His smile was bitter, and I needed you too badly to be honest. He left her there, alone in the bathroom, with bleeding palms and a dress torn by her own fear. Maya eventually made her way to her room, stripped off the ruined gown, and stood under a scalding shower until her skin turned red and the water ran cold. But she couldn't wash away the memory of gunshots, the feel of bullets passing close enough to displace air against her skin, the knowledge that someone wanted her frightened, wanted her vulnerable, wanted to prove that Damien's protection meant nothing. Sleep was impossible. Maya paced her room until dawn painted the sky in shades of gray and gold, her mind racing through options that all led to the same conclusion. She was trapped. The contract bound her. Damien's enemies made her a target. Running would get her father killed and probably herself as well. The only way out was through. When morning finally came, Maya dressed carefully in clothes meant for war disguised as a social visit. A tailored dress, heels sharp enough to be weapons, her face painted with the makeup that transformed her into Mrs. Damien Crow. She found Damien in his study, looking like he hadn't slept either, his shirt rumpled and his eyes bloodshot. I want to fight back, Maya said, without preamble. Damien looked up from whatever papers he'd been reviewing. What? You heard me. I'm tired of being a target, a victim, a thing for Voss to shoot at, and you to protect. Maya crossed to his desk, planting her hands on its surface. You said I'm caught in this war. Fine. Then teach me how to be useful in it. Something flickered in Damien's eyes. Surprise, maybe? Or reassessment? You want to be useful? I want to stop feeling helpless. Maya's voice was steady now. All the fear from last night crystallized into something harder. You need me to be convincing as your wife? Then make me a real partner, not just a pretty face to parade around. Give me actual purpose. Damien studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he stood, moving around the desk until he was close enough that Maya had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. You understand what you're asking for? His voice was soft, dangerous. You want into my world? Really into it? Not just the pretty parts, the galas and the charity events and the carefully staged photo opportunities. You want to see the machinery underneath, the violence, the choices that keep me awake at night. Yes? Why? Because I'm already in it, whether I want to be or not. Maya held his gaze. Last night proved that. Voss doesn't care that I'm just playing a role. To him, I'm leverage, a weakness, something to exploit. So if I'm going to survive this, I need to be more than just your convenient fiction. Damien's hand came up, his thumb brushing across her cheek in a gesture that felt almost tender. You surprise me, Maya Carter. Every time I think I have you figured out, you do something unexpected. Is that a yes? It's a warning. His hand dropped. Once I show you the real machinery of my empire, you can't unsee it. You'll know things that make you complicit, an accessory. If this ever goes wrong, if I ever fall, you fall with me. Is that what you want? Maya thought of the bullets last night, the terror, the helplessness. Thought of her father in rehab, safe only because she'd agreed to this arrangement. Thought of the next 5 years stretching ahead of her, each day a performance, each night wondering when the next attack would come. Show me, she said. Damien's smile was sharp and approving. Then let's start with the basics. What do you know about Kellen Voss? Only what you've told me. He's your rival. He's dangerous. He wants to destroy you. Incomplete. Damien moved to a cabinet, withdrawing a thick file. Kellen Voss runs the second largest criminal operation in New England. Drugs, weapons, human trafficking. He has his fingers in everything dirty. We've been at war for territory for the past 3 years. Ever since I took over operations, he considered his by right. He spread photographs across his desk. Voss at various locations, clubs, warehouses, meetings with men who looked like violence incarnate. His wife died 8 months ago, Damien continued. Cancer. By all accounts, he actually loved her. Her death made him more dangerous, reckless, emotional, willing to take bigger risks. Men like us, Maya, we're most dangerous when we have nothing left to lose. And your engagement to me threatens him how? Because it suggests I'm stable, grounded, building something legitimate. Damien's finger tapped one of the photos. Voss has been using my isolation against me, painting me as a paranoid tyrant who can't maintain relationships. Your presence undermines that narrative, makes me sympathetic, human. Maya studied the photographs, trying to see past Voss's handsome facade to the monster underneath. So what's his next move? That's what we need to figure out. Damien pulled up a digital map on one of his laptops, marking locations with red pins. These are my primary operations. Voss has hit 3 in the past month, always at vulnerable times, always with inside information. Someone in my organization is feeding him intelligence. Marcus said you handled the leak. We handled one leak. There could be others. Damien's jaw tightened. Trust is a liability in my world. Everyone has a price. Everyone can be bought or threatened into betrayal. It's just a matter of finding the right pressure point. That sounds exhausting. It is. For just a moment, something almost like weariness crossed Damien's face. But it's how you survive, how you build an empire that lasts. You trust no one completely. You always have contingencies. You prepare for betrayal like it's inevitable, because it is. Maya thought about that, living every day expecting the people around you to turn, to sell you out, to become weapons in enemy hands. Is that why you're alone? Why you needed to manufacture a relationship instead of finding a real one? Damien's eyes locked on hers. Who says I'm alone? You just told me you trust no one. Trust and companionship aren't the same thing. His voice went quiet, almost introspective. I have people around me constantly, employees, associates, business partners, but none of them know me. None of them see past the mask to whatever's underneath. They see Damien Crow, the kingpin, the billionaire, the man who controls half this city. They don't see the person. Maybe that's by design, Maya said softly. Maybe it is. Damien turned back to the map. Regardless, we need to focus. Voss is escalating. The warehouse hit. The shooting last night. He's testing our defenses, looking for weak points. We need to anticipate his next move. Maya leaned over the desk, studying the map with its constellation of red pins. Her architecture training kicked in. Patterns, structures, systems. She saw the city not as streets and buildings, but as a network, each node connected to others through invisible lines of power and commerce. What's he targeting? She asked. I mean specifically, what do these locations have in common? Damien looked at her with something like approval. Cash flow. These aren't my most valuable operations, but they're the ones that generate immediate liquidity. Money I can't easily replace. So he's trying to bleed you financially, while simultaneously making me look weak and vulnerable. Classic strategy. Attack on multiple fronts, force your enemy to divide their resources. Maya's finger traced lines between the pins, seeing patterns emerge. These 3 hits, they're all on the eastern side of the city, nothing west. Why? Damien went very still. What? Look. Maya grabbed a pen, connecting the dots. All his attacks cluster here, but your operations extend across the entire metropolitan area. He's only hitting one geographic region. Either he doesn't have the reach to go wider, or he's setting up for something bigger in a specific location. Damien's eyes went sharp, predatory, and we've been too busy plugging holes to see the larger pattern. He pulled up another screen, overlaying property records with criminal intelligence. His fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up data that made Maya's head spin. Then he stopped, his face going cold. There. He pointed to a location on the waterfront. Abandoned warehouse complex. Voss has been quietly buying up properties around it through shell companies. I thought he was just expanding his territory, but if your theory is right, he's building a fortress, Maya finished, consolidating his base of operations in one defensible location. And bleeding me dry so I can't afford to challenge him when he makes his move. Damien's smile was vicious. Smart. If I hadn't been so focused on the immediate attacks, I might have missed it entirely. He looked at Maya with something she'd never seen in his eyes before. Genuine respect, maybe even a hint of admiration. You have a strategic mind. That's rare. Useful. I'm an architecture student. I'm trained to see systems and structures. You're more than that. Damien's hand found her chin, tilting her face up. You're smart, observant, quick to adapt. If circumstances were different, if we'd met some other way, he stopped himself, something unreadable flickering across his face. What? Maya whispered. Nothing. It doesn't matter. He released her, turning back to the map. We need to verify this theory. Marcus can run surveillance on the warehouse complex, confirm Voss's movements. If you're right, we have a chance to hit back hard. And if I'm wrong? Then we've wasted time we don't have. Damien's eyes met hers. But my instincts say you're not wrong. You just gave us the first real tactical advantage we've had in months. Maya felt something unfamiliar stir in her chest, pride maybe, or validation. She'd been useful. Not just a prop in Damien's performance, but an actual asset, a partner. What happens now? She asked. Now we plan. Damien pulled out his phone, texting rapid instructions. Marcus will gather intelligence, we'll confirm your theory, and then... His smile turned predatory. We make Kellen Voss regret ever putting a target on you. Over the next 72 hours, Maya learned exactly what Damien meant by showing her the real machinery of his empire. She sat in on strategy sessions where men discussed violence like business transactions, reviewed surveillance footage of Voss's operations, learning to recognize his lieutenants by sight, studied the financial networks that kept Damien's legitimate businesses separated from the criminal enterprises that funded them. It was intoxicating and horrifying in equal measure. Maya watched Damien orchestrate moves and countermoves with the precision of a chess master, each decision calculated to maximize advantage while minimizing risk. She saw the intelligence that had built an empire from nothing, the ruthlessness that maintained it, the careful balance between legitimate power and criminal control. And she saw the toll it took. Damien barely slept, surviving on coffee and sheer will, dark circles bruising his eyes. He snapped at subordinates, second-guessed decisions, displayed flashes of paranoia that suggested the weight of his empire was crushing him from the inside out. On the third night, Maya found him in his study at 2 a.m., surrounded by papers and half-empty whiskey glasses, staring at screens like they held answers he couldn't quite see. You need sleep, she said from the doorway. I need Voss dead. Damien's voice was rough with exhaustion. I need his operation dismantled. I need this war over before it costs me everything. Maya crossed to him, surprising herself by reaching out and taking the whiskey glass from his hand. Drinking yourself unconscious won't help. Neither will sleeping when my enemy is plotting my destruction. Your enemy is winning because you're too exhausted to think straight. Maya set the glass aside. Damien, when's the last time you actually rested? Rest is a luxury I can't afford. It's not a luxury, it's a tactical necessity. She pulled him to his feet, ignoring his protest. You're the most controlled person I've ever met, but right now you're running on fumes and making decisions from a place of fear instead of strategy. That's how you lose. Damien studied her with bloodshot eyes. When did you get so wise? When I stopped being terrified long enough to think clearly. Maya guided him toward the door. Come on, bed, real sleep. The war will still be here in the morning. To her surprise, he didn't fight her. Damien followed her through the dark mansion to the second floor, where Maya left him at the door to his suite with instructions to actually lie down. She turned to go, but his hand caught hers. Maya. His voice was rough, vulnerable in a way she'd never heard. Thank you. For seeing the pattern Voss was building, for being useful instead of just decoration, for... He stopped, seeming to struggle with words. For caring whether I sleep. Don't read too much into it, Maya said, but her voice was gentler than she'd intended. I just need you functional enough to keep me alive. Damien's smile was tired but genuine. Of course, strategy. He disappeared into his suite, leaving Maya alone in the darkened hallway with her hand still warm from his touch and her mind churning with thoughts she didn't want to examine too closely. She was supposed to hate him. He'd bought her like property, forced her into a performance, put her life in danger. She should despise everything about Damien Crowe. But somewhere between the terror and the performances and the late-night strategy sessions, something had shifted. Maya didn't love him. She wasn't that far gone, but she was starting to understand him, see past the predator to the exhausted man beneath. Recognize that he was as trapped by his empire as she was by their contract. And that understanding felt more dangerous than any bullet Kellen Voss could fire. Marcus confirmed Maya's theory 48 hours later. The surveillance footage was damning, Voss's men moving through the waterfront warehouse complex like they owned it, fortifying positions, installing security systems that would make the place nearly impenetrable. He was building a stronghold, and every attack on Damien's operations had been designed to drain the resources that might have stopped him. He'll be vulnerable during the transition, Marcus said, pointing to the timeline he'd constructed. Moving his primary operations to the new location means a 72-hour window where he's split between two sites. If we're going to hit back, that's our opening. Damien studied the surveillance with predatory focus. When? Best estimate? 5 days? Maybe 6. That's not enough time to plan a full assault. Then we don't plan a full assault. Maya's voice surprised even herself. All eyes in the study turned toward her. Damien, Marcus, Joel, and 3 other men whose names she'd learned but whose roles in Damien's empire remained shadowy. We do what Voss has been doing to you. Hit him where it hurts most when he can't defend properly. Damien's expression shifted to something calculating. You have a specific target in mind? Maya pointed to a section of the waterfront map. His old headquarters. If he's moving operations, that location becomes secondary, vulnerable. And if your intelligence is right about his cash reserves being stored there until the transition is complete, we take his money while he's too busy fortifying his new fortress to properly defend the old one. Damien's smile was vicious and approving. Smart. Painful. It puts him on the defensive and funds our own operations simultaneously. It's also extremely dangerous, Marcus interjected. Even diminished, Voss will have security at the old location. We'd need a team, precision timing, and if it goes wrong, it won't go wrong. Damien's voice carried absolute certainty. Because I'll be leading the operation personally. The room went silent. Even Marcus looked shocked. Sir, that's not advisable, Marcus said carefully. You haven't done field work in years. There are people better suited. This is personal. Damien's eyes were cold, final. Voss shot at my fiancé, threatened what's mine. I don't delegate revenge, Marcus, I execute it. Maya felt something twist in her chest at the possessiveness in his voice, the way he said mine like she was something more than a contracted asset. She pushed the feeling away, focusing on the tactical problem instead of the emotional minefield. If you're going, I'm going with you, she heard herself say. Every man in the room stared at her like she'd grown a second head. Damien's expression went from determined to thunderous in a heartbeat. Absolutely not. You need someone who understands architecture and structural systems, Maya pressed. That warehouse has been abandoned for 20 years. I've studied the building records. The place is a maze of old offices and storage spaces. You need someone who can read the layout, identify weaknesses, Find alternate routes if the primary plan fails. I need you alive and safe, not bleeding out in a warehouse because you got caught in crossfire. I'm already in crossfire. Maya's voice rose despite herself. Boss shot at me, remember? I'm a target, whether I hide in this mansion or actually do something useful. At least this way I have some control over the outcome. Damien crossed to her in 3 strides, his presence overwhelming. You have no idea what you're asking for. Real combat isn't strategy sessions in comfortable offices. It's chaos and violence and split-second decisions where hesitation gets you killed. You're not trained for this. Then train me. Maya held his stare, refusing to back down. You said you'd show me the real machinery of your empire. Well, this is it, isn't it? The violence that keeps your kingdom running. I want to understand it. All of it. Something flickered in Damien's eyes, conflict maybe, or reluctant admiration warring with concern that looked almost genuine. You could die. I could die tomorrow crossing the street, or next week when Voss makes another move, or in 5 years when this contract ends, and I know too much to be allowed to walk away free. Maya's voice softened slightly. At least this way I'm choosing the risk instead of having it chosen for me. The silence stretched until Marcus cleared his throat. She has a point about the structural knowledge. The warehouse is a tactical nightmare. Old construction, multiple levels, areas that aren't on any modern blueprints. Having someone who can navigate that in real time could mean the difference between success and disaster. Damien looked at Marcus like he'd committed treason. You're actually supporting this insanity? I'm supporting tactical advantage. Marcus's expression remained neutral. Miss Carter has proven herself strategically valuable. And frankly, sir, she's right about already being a target. Voss won't stop coming after her. Teaching her to defend herself isn't the worst idea. Damien's jaw clenched so hard Maya heard his teeth grind. Fine, but if she's coming, she trains starting now. And if at any point I decide she's not ready, she stays behind. Non-negotiable. Maya nodded, trying to ignore the rush of adrenaline and terror flooding her system. She'd just volunteered to walk into a war zone. Part of her screamed that this was insane, that she should hide behind her guards and let Damien's people handle the violence. But a larger part, the part that had been helpless during the shooting, that was tired of being a pretty prop in someone else's game, needed this. The next 4 days were brutal. Joel, who apparently had military training from a past Maya didn't ask about, ran her through basic weapons handling in the mansion's private gun range. The first time Maya held a pistol, her hand shook so badly she could barely grip it properly. It's a tool, Joel said patiently, adjusting her stance. Nothing more. Respect it, control it, but don't fear it. Fear makes you hesitate, and hesitation gets you killed. Maya learned to load, aim, fire. The first shot kicked harder than she expected, the noise even through ear protection making her flinch. But she kept practicing, kept adjusting, kept pulling the trigger until the motion became automatic and her hands stopped shaking. Marcus taught her tactical movement, how to clear corners, how to use cover effectively, how to read a space for threats and exits. He was patient but demanding, making her repeat exercises until her muscles burned and her lungs screamed. You're small, which means you're fast, Marcus explained, demonstrating proper cover techniques. Use that. Don't try to outmuscle threats, you'll lose. Outthink them, outmaneuver them, be where they don't expect. And Damien taught her the ugly truths about violence that no amount of tactical training could prepare her for. You're going to see people get hurt, he said on the 3rd night, his voice quiet and serious as they stood in his study. Maybe killed. You need to be ready for that, not just intellectually, but emotionally. The first time you see real violence, your body will want to shut down. Fight, flight, or freeze. Those are your options, and only one keeps you alive. Fight, Maya said. Not always. Damien moved closer, his presence commanding attention. Sometimes the smartest move is flight. Knowing when to retreat isn't cowardice, it's survival. And if you freeze, if the shock overwhelms you, people die, including you. How do I prevent that? You accept it now. Visualize it. Prepare yourself for the worst thing you can imagine and then add 10%. His hand came up, fingers ghosting along her jaw. You're about to see a side of me you've only glimpsed. The man who built this empire through violence and fear. It's not pretty, Maya. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Maya met his eyes. I know what you are, Damien. I've always known. Knowing and witnessing are different things. His thumb traced her cheekbone, the gesture almost tender. I don't want you to look at me with fear after this, or disgust, or what? He dropped his hand, turning away. Nothing. It doesn't matter, just be ready. The night before the operation, Maya couldn't sleep. She paced her room until after midnight, then gave up and wandered the mansion's dark hallways. She found herself outside her father's old room, the guest suite where he'd stayed for one night before being shipped off to rehab, and pushed open the door. The space was empty now, pristine and impersonal, all traces of Ethan Carter erased like he'd never existed. Maya sank onto the bed, pulling out her phone to look at photos she'd taken weeks ago, her father smiling at her graduation, younger and healthier, before gambling and desperation had hollowed him out. She'd received exactly 3 supervised calls from him since he'd entered the facility. He sounded better each time, clearer, more present, genuinely working the program. But the distance between them felt oceanic, and Maya couldn't tell anymore if it was the rehab or her own transformation creating the gap. Can't sleep either? Maya jumped, nearly dropping her phone. Damien stood in the doorway wearing black sleep pants and nothing else, his torso a landscape of muscle and scattered scars that told stories she'd never heard. In the low light, he looked more human than she'd ever seen him, less kingpin, more just a man carrying too much weight. Nerves, Maya admitted. Tomorrow is... It's a lot. It is. Damien entered the room, keeping respectful distance. You can still back out. No one would blame you. Would you think less of me if I did? He considered the question seriously. No, I'd think you were being smart. Self-preservation is logical. But you'd be disappointed. Does that matter to you? Damien's eyes searched hers. What I think? Maya didn't know how to answer that. 3 weeks ago, she would have said no instantly. Damien Crow's opinion meant nothing to her. He was the monster who'd bought her freedom, the predator who'd caged her. But now, after late-night strategy sessions and exhausted conversations and moments where he looked at her like she was more than just a convenient asset, yes, she whispered, it matters. Something shifted in Damien's expression, his usual cold control cracking to reveal something raw underneath. You terrify me, Maya Carter. I terrify you. I'm a college student with a gun I barely know how to use. You're a college student who sees through every mask I've built, who makes me want things I have no right to want, who makes me remember what it feels like to... He stopped himself, jaw tight. This was supposed to be simple. A transaction. 5 years of performance in exchange for your father's life. Clean, controllable. What changed? You did. Damien moved closer, close enough that Maya could see the war in his eyes. Want and denial, desire and discipline. You stopped being a prop and became a person. Someone smart and brave and so goddamn determined to find purpose in this nightmare. And now I can't... His hand rose, cupping her face with a gentleness that stole her breath. I can't keep pretending this is just business anymore. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. Damien, I know this is wrong. You're here under duress. The power dynamic is completely fucked. I own your contract, your time, your public identity for 5 years. Anything between us would be tainted by coercion, no matter how genuine it felt. Then why are you saying this? Because tomorrow we're walking into a situation where we might not walk back out. Damien's thumb traced her lower lip, his eyes dark and intense. And if I die without telling you the truth, that somewhere between your strategic mind and your stubborn courage, and the way you look at me like I'm still salvageable, I started falling for the girl I was supposed to just be using. I'd regret it in whatever hell is waiting for men like me. The confession hung between them, naked and terrifying. Maya knew she should step back, maintain distance, remember that this man had bought her compliance with threats to her father's life. But the Damien standing before her wasn't the cold predator from the penthouse office. This was someone exhausted and conflicted and looking at her like she was the only real thing in a world built on lies. I can't trust this, Maya said quietly. I can't trust what I feel because I don't know if it's real or just Stockholm Syndrome. You control everything about my life, Damien. How am I supposed to know if what I'm feeling is genuine attraction or just survival instinct telling me to bond with my captor? You're not. Damien's smile was sad, self-aware. That's why I'm not asking for anything. I'm just telling you the truth so you know it exists. What you do with that information, ignore it, use it against me, let it change how you see me. That's entirely your choice. He started to pull away, but Maya's hand caught his wrist. Don't go. Not yet. They stood like that for a long moment, connected by touch and shared fear and something neither could name. Then Damien pulled her into an embrace that felt nothing like possession and everything like desperation, two people clinging to something real in a world built on performance and violence. Whatever happens tomorrow, Damien murmured against her hair. You stay alive. That's an order. You see an exit, you take it. You encounter resistance you can't handle, you retreat. Your safety matters more than the mission, more than the money, more than— His arms tightened, more than anything. Maya pulled back enough to see his face. Same goes for you. You don't get to play hero and die for this. I didn't sign up to be a widow before I'm even actually a wife. Deal. His smile was brief but genuine. They separated slowly, reluctantly. Damien left her in the empty room with her racing thoughts and the phantom warmth of his embrace. Maya didn't sleep that night either, but the fear felt different now, mixed with something dangerously close to hope. Morning came too quickly. Maya dressed in black tactical gear that felt foreign against her skin. Fitted pants, boots with actual traction, a vest that was supposedly bulletproof but felt thin as paper. She tied her hair back, checked her weapon like Joel had taught her, and tried not to think about the fact that in a few hours she might have to actually use it. The team assembled in the mansion's garage, 12 people total, including Damien and Maya. Marcus ran through the plan one final time, his voice calm and professional despite the violence they were about to commit. Primary objective: secure the cash reserves in the northeast corner of the second floor. Secondary objective: destroy any records that might compromise our operations. Tertiary: send a message Voss won't forget. Marcus's eyes swept across the group. Rules of engagement are simple. We're not there to kill everyone who gets in our way, just anyone who actively threatens the mission. This is a surgical strike, not a massacre. Maya caught Damien's eye across the garage. He looked every inch the predator now, focused, controlled, dangerous. But when he glanced at her, something softened briefly in his expression. A reminder, a promise. They drove in 3 vehicles, taking different routes to avoid detection. Maya rode with Damien and Marcus, the silence in the car heavy with anticipation. The warehouse district was industrial and abandoned, the kind of area where gunshots wouldn't even warrant police response until morning. Voss's old headquarters rose from the waterfront like a carcass, 5 stories of brick and broken windows, graffiti crawling up walls, the whole structure listing slightly like it might collapse from shame alone. But the security cameras glinting in the darkness and the guards Maya could see patrolling the perimeter proved it wasn't as abandoned as it looked. 2 guards at the main entrance, Marcus murmured, studying the building through binoculars. 3 more on the second floor, visible through the east windows. Unknown number inside. Miss Carter, you're with me and Mr. Crow. Joel's team takes the west entrance, creates a distraction. We go in through the loading dock on the south side while they're occupied. The plan was simple, elegant, based entirely on Voss's people being too confident in their old fortress and too distracted by the transition to mount proper defense. It started falling apart the moment they entered the building. The loading dock was supposed to be clear. Marcus's intelligence said it would be unmanned during the transition. But the moment Damien pushed open the door, gunfire erupted from the darkness. Muzzle flashes illuminated the space in strobing snapshots of chaos. Maya hit the ground on instinct, Marcus's training overriding terror, her weapon up and firing at shadows. Ambush! Marcus's voice cut through the noise. They knew we were coming! Fall back! But falling back meant exposing themselves to the kill zone they'd just entered. Damien made a split-second decision, grabbing Maya's arm and pulling her forward instead, using the loading dock's pillars for cover while his team laid down suppressing fire. The stairs! Damien pointed to a metal staircase barely visible through the gloom. Second floor, now! They ran through darkness and bullets, Maya's heart hammering so hard she thought it might explode. Someone screamed. One of Damien's people hit, going down hard. Marcus returned fire with cold precision, dropping 2 of Voss's guards while covering their retreat. Maya's lungs burned as they hit the stairs, taking them 2 at a time while the firefight raged below. The second floor was a maze exactly like the blueprints had shown. Old offices and corridors branching in every direction, darkness broken only by weak light from broken windows. The cash reserves are in the northeast corner, Maya gasped, pulling up the mental map she'd memorized. Through this corridor, left at the junction, 3rd door. "You're sure?" Damien's eyes were hard, focused, completely in combat mode. "I'm sure." They moved fast and quiet, Marcus on point, Damien covering the rear, Maya sandwiched between them. The building creaked and groaned around them, old bones settling. Then Maya heard it. Voices ahead, footsteps, someone giving orders in sharp, clipped tones. Marcus held up a fist. Everyone froze. He mouthed, 4 targets, office ahead, between us and objective. Damien's jaw set. He looked at Maya, and in that glance she saw the question he couldn't ask aloud. Could she do this? Could she actually engage in violence instead of just training for it? Maya nodded once. She didn't trust her voice not to shake. What happened next unfolded in seconds that felt like hours. Marcus and Damien breached the office in a coordinated assault, their movements so synchronized they might have been dancing. Maya followed, her weapon up, her training overriding the screaming terror in her mind. One of Voss's men turned, raising his gun. Maya fired without thinking. 3 shots, center mass like Joel had drilled into her. The man went down. She'd just shot someone. Actually shot another human being. Her stomach lurched, but there was no time to process because more guards were coming and Damien was engaging 2 at once and Marcus was yelling something about the door. Maya ran. Through the office, past bodies she didn't look at too closely, into the corridor beyond. The door Marcus had indicated was reinforced steel, locked with a keypad that would take too long to crack. "Stand back!" Damien appeared beside her, attaching something to the lock. "Breaching charge. 3 seconds." They ducked around the corner. The explosion was smaller than movies made them look, but deafeningly loud in the enclosed space. Smoke and dust filled the air. Then they were through, into a room stacked with cash, hundreds of thousands in neat bricks. Voss's liquid reserves waiting to fund his transition. "Grab what you can carry," Damien ordered, pulling out duffel bags. "We've got maybe 2 minutes before—" The window exploded inward in a shower of glass and violence. A figure came through, fast, brutal, armed and armored. One of Voss's elite guards, and he went straight for Damien with killing intent. They collided in a blur of motion. Maya raised her weapon but couldn't get a clean shot. They were moving too fast, too close together. Marcus engaged another threat coming through the door. The room descended into chaos. Maya saw the knife too late, saw it flash in the guard's hand, saw him drive it toward Damien's throat with murderous precision, saw Damien block but not fast enough, the blade opening a line of red across his shoulder. Something in Maya snapped. She stopped thinking, stopped being the college student who'd been terrified of guns 4 days ago. Became something else, something fierce and protective and willing to kill to defend what was hers. She put 3 rounds in the guard's back, watched him fall, didn't feel anything but grim satisfaction. Damien staggered, blood soaking through his tactical gear, but his eyes when they met hers were alive with something primal and approving. "Good shot. You're bleeding. I'll live. Grab the money. We need to—" The radios crackled. Joel's panicked voice. "They've got explosives. The whole building is rigged. Voss is trying to bury us." The world tilted. Maya heard it then. The ominous beeping, the electronic countdown that meant death packaged in C4 and Diet Cord. Voss had turned his old headquarters into a death trap, and they'd walked right in. "Out!" Damien grabbed 2 duffel bags, hauling them over his uninjured shoulder. "Now! Everyone out!" They ran. Through corridors that seemed to stretch forever, past firefights and fallen bodies and rooms that smelled like cordite and blood. The building groaned around them, explosions starting in the lower floors, the whole structure beginning its death rattle. Maya's lungs screamed, her legs burned, but she kept running, following Damien and Marcus through the maze, using her architectural knowledge to navigate when corridors filled with smoke and fire blocked primary routes. "This way." She pointed to a service stairwell not on the main blueprints. "It's old, but it should still—" The floor beneath them buckled. Maya felt herself falling, the world spinning, then Damien's hand clamping around her wrist with bruising force. He hauled her up and over a gap that had just opened in the floor, his injured shoulder screaming, but his grip never faltering. They hit the ground floor as the upper stories began to collapse. The loading dock exit was blocked by debris and flame. The main entrance was a kill zone. But Maya remembered something from the blueprints, a maintenance tunnel, old and probably unstable, that led to the waterfront. "There," she pointed to a half-hidden door. "The tunnel system. It's risky, but it's the only way. Go!" Damien shoved her forward. They plunged into darkness and wet stone, The tunnel barely wide enough for single file, water up to their ankles, the ceiling so low they had to duck. Behind them, the warehouse was dying in fire and thunder. Ahead was only darkness and the slim hope of survival. Maya counted steps, 50, 100, 200, while her lungs burned and her muscles screamed, and somewhere behind them, the building collapsed in on itself with a roar like the end of the world. Then air, fresh and cold and beautiful. They stumbled out onto the waterfront, gasping and bleeding and alive. The warehouse was an inferno behind them, orange flames painting the night sky, sirens already wailing in the distance. Damien collapsed against a concrete piling, his shoulders soaked with blood, but his eyes fixed on Maya with something raw and unguarded. "You saved my life." "You saved mine first." Maya's hand shook as adrenaline drained, leaving her hollow and numb. "We're even." Marcus appeared from the darkness, soot-stained and exhausted. "Joel's team made it out. We lost 3 people, but we got the money." He hefted the duffel bags they'd somehow held onto through everything. 2 million, maybe more. It should have felt like victory. They'd accomplished the mission, struck back at Voss, funded their operations, but all Maya could see was the man she'd killed, faceless in her memory, but undeniably dead by her hand. "I shot someone," she said quietly. "I killed them." "You defended yourself." Damien's hand found hers, gripping tight. "You did what you had to do to survive. That's not murder, Maya. That's survival." "It doesn't feel different." "I know." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "The first kill never does, but you'll learn to live with it. I did. Everyone in this life does." Maya looked at him, blood-soaked and exhausted and more human than she'd ever seen him, and realized the truth. She wasn't horrified by what she'd done. She wasn't drowning in guilt or shame. She felt hollow, yes, shaken, definitely. But underneath the shock was something darker and more honest. She'd do it again. To protect Damien, to protect herself, to survive in this world she'd been dragged into. And that realization was more terrifying than any gunfight. The ride back to the mansion was silent. Medical waited to treat Damien's wound, deep but not critical, requiring stitches and antibiotics. Maya sat in his study while a doctor worked on his shoulder, watching him accept pain without flinching. "Voss will retaliate," Marcus said, already planning next moves. "This was a significant blow, financial and psychological. He won't let it stand." "Let him come." Damien's voice was rough with exhaustion. "We proved we can hit back, that I'm not weak or isolated, that—" His eyes found Maya. "That I have someone worth fighting for." Marcus excused himself tactfully. The doctor finished and left. Maya and Damien sat alone in the study as dawnlight crept through the windows, painting everything in shades of gold and blood. "I need to see my father," Maya said quietly. "After tonight, after everything, I need to see him. Make sure he's real, that something good came out of this nightmare." Damien nodded slowly. "I'll arrange it. Supervised visit, 1 hour, tomorrow, if he's ready. Thank you." "Don't thank me, Maya. Not for the bare minimum of human decency." He stood, wincing as his shoulder protested. "You should rest. Real sleep, not the performance of it. So should you." "I will, after I—" He stopped, looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "After I stop seeing you in that building. In danger. Almost dying." Maya crossed to him, surprising them both by reaching up to cup his face. "But I didn't die. We didn't die. We survived. This time." His hand covered hers. "Maya, what we did tonight, that can't become normal. I won't let this life destroy you the way it's destroyed everyone else who's touched it. Maybe I'm already destroyed. Maybe I was the moment I signed your contract." "No." Damien's voice was fierce, certain. "You're not destroyed. You're transforming, becoming someone who can survive in this world without losing yourself to it. That's different. That's—" He pulled her closer, resting his forehead against hers. "That's extraordinary." They stood like that as morning broke around them. 2 people bound by violence and contracts and something neither could name, but both could feel building between them like a storm waiting to break. And somewhere in the ruins of Voss's headquarters, among the ashes and the dead, a war was being born that would either destroy them both or forge them into something unbreakable. The visit with her father happened in a sterile conference room at the rehab facility. supervised by a counselor who sat discreetly in the corner while Ethan Carter embraced his daughter for the first time in 6 weeks. He looked different, healthier, his eyes clearer, the haunted desperation replaced by something fragile but genuine. Hope, maybe, or the beginnings of it. "You look good, Dad," Maya said, and meant it. "So do you. Different, but good." Ethan studied her face like he was trying to memorize it. "I saw the news about the warehouse fire. They're saying it was some kind of gang war. Maya, tell me you weren't—" "I wasn't anywhere near it," Maya lied smoothly, the deception coming easier than breathing now. "Damien keeps me protected. Safe." Ethan's expression suggested he didn't entirely believe her, but he didn't push. Instead, he took her hands, his grip steady and strong. "I'm 60 days sober. 60 days without gambling, without the obsession eating me alive. The counselors say I'm making real progress. I'm proud of you." "Don't be." "Not yet." His voice cracked slightly. "I destroyed our lives, Maya. Sold your inheritance, got you trapped in a contract with a man who—" He glanced at the counselor, lowering his voice. "Who scares the hell out of me every time I see him on the news. What kind of father does that to his daughter?" "The kind who was sick and desperate and didn't see another way." Maya squeezed his hands. "You made terrible choices, Dad, but you're fixing them now. That's what matters." "Is he good to you, Crow? Does he treat you well?" The question was loaded with concern and guilt. Maya thought about Damien's confession before the raid, his fierce protectiveness during the firefight, the way he looked at her like she was something precious and dangerous all at once. She thought about violence and strategy sessions and moments of unexpected tenderness in a world built on lies. "It's complicated," she said finally. "But yes, in his own way, he's good to me." Ethan didn't look reassured, but he nodded. They talked for the remaining 40 minutes about small things, his therapy, her classes, memories of her mother that felt both close and impossibly distant. When the hour ended, Maya hugged her father goodbye with the knowledge that he was healing while she was transforming into something he might not recognize when they next met. The war with Voss escalated exactly as Marcus had predicted. 3 days after the warehouse raid, one of Damien's restaurants burned to the ground in an arson attack so blatant it made the evening news. A week later, 2 of his legitimate business partners received threatening packages that sent the stock prices of their shared ventures plummeting. Voss was attacking on every front, criminal and legitimate, financial and physical, trying to bleed Damien's empire from 1,000 cuts. But Damien fought back with calculated precision, using the intelligence Maya continued to provide, her architectural eye spotting patterns in Voss's property acquisitions, her strategic mind identifying weak points in his supply chains. They struck where it hurt most. A shipment intercepted here, a corrupt city official quietly persuaded to switch loyalties there. Death by 1,000 cuts could work both ways. Maya found herself deeper in Damien's world with each passing day, attending strategy sessions that discussed violence like quarterly earnings reports, reviewing surveillance footage that showed people dying in grainy black and white, becoming fluent in the language of organized crime. The college student who'd walked into Damien's office 8 weeks ago felt like a stranger now, someone soft and naive who couldn't survive in the world Maya currently inhabited. The wedding happened on a Saturday in May, rushed and elegant and witnessed by 200 of Boston's most powerful people who had no idea they were celebrating a transaction dressed as romance. Maya wore white silk that cost more than a car, diamonds borrowed from Damien's vault that probably had their own security detail, and a smile painted on so perfectly that even she almost believed it was real. Damien stood at the altar in a tuxedo that made him look like old Hollywood royalty, his expression unreadable as Maya walked down an aisle carpeted in rose petals. When she reached him, his hand closed around hers with a grip that felt less like possession and more like anchoring, 2 people tethered together in a storm they'd both stopped fighting. "You're beautiful," he murmured, and for once it didn't feel like performance. "You're terrifying," Maya whispered back, but she was smiling. The vows were traditional, borrowed from ceremonies that meant something to people who'd chosen their partners freely. Maya spoke the words clearly, her voice steady, watching something shift in Damien's eyes when she promised to love, honor, and cherish until death parted them. His own vows came out rougher, textured with emotion he couldn't quite hide, and when he slipped the platinum band onto her finger, it felt heavier than mere metal. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant declared. "You may kiss the bride." Damien's hands framed her face with unexpected gentleness, his eyes searching hers for permission that went beyond the performance they were staging. Maya gave it with a slight nod, and when his lips met hers, it was nothing like the chaste kiss of a business arrangement. It was heat and hunger and barely restrained want, a claiming that made her forget they had an audience until applause erupted around them. They separated slowly, Damien's thumb tracing her lower lip as he whispered, "Mrs. Crow." "Mr. Crow," Maya replied, and felt the title settle over her like armor. The reception was a blur of champagne and carefully choreographed conversations with people who mattered to Damien's legitimate empire. Maya danced with Boston's elite, laughed at appropriate moments, played the radiant bride with such conviction that even Patricia would have approved. And through it all, Damien stayed close, his hand at her back, his presence a constant reminder that this performance had become something more complicated than either of them had anticipated. It was during the third dance, with Damien's arms around her and a string quartet playing something classical and romantic, that Maya saw Kellen Voss across the ballroom. He stood near the entrance, uninvited and undeterred, wearing a tuxedo that probably cost as much as Damien's but somehow looked cheaper. His smile was sharp and knowing as he raised a champagne flute in mocking toast, and Maya felt Damien go rigid against her. "He's here," she murmured. "How did he get past security?" "Because he wants me to know he can reach anywhere, even my wedding." Damien's voice was controlled fury. "Marcus!" But Voss was already moving toward them, cutting through the crowd with the confidence of a man who believed himself untouchable. Guests parted instinctively, sensing predators circling, their conversations dying to whispers. "Damien! Maya!" Voss's smile was all teeth. "What a beautiful ceremony. I was so moved I had to come offer my congratulations personally." "You weren't invited," Damien said flatly. "No? How rude of me to crash such an intimate gathering." Voss's eyes swept across the ballroom, taking in the ostentatious display of wealth and power. "Although I have to wonder, is this love or just very expensive theater? Hard to tell with you, Crow. You've always been good at performing humanity." Maya felt Damien's muscles coil, violence simmering beneath his control. She stepped forward before he could respond, putting herself between the two men with a smile that could cut glass. "It's real," she said clearly, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent ballroom. "More real than whatever hollow victory you're imagining by showing up here. You think crashing our wedding proves you're winning? All it proves is that you're desperate and losing." Voss's smile froze. "Careful, little girl. You're playing in waters too deep for you." "Am I?" Maya moved closer, close enough to smell his expensive cologne and the rage underneath. "Because from where I'm standing, you're the one drowning. Every move you make against my husband costs you money, loyalty, credibility. You burned his restaurant and lost 3 of your best distributors when their shipments got intercepted. You threatened his business partners and 2 of them switched their investments to his competitors. You're hemorrhaging resources fighting a war you can't win, and everyone in this room knows it." The silence was absolute. Maya could feel 200 pairs of eyes watching, witnessing, cataloging this confrontation for the stories they'd tell later. Voss's face had gone red, his fists clenched at his sides. "This isn't over," he said, his voice low and venomous. "No," Damien agreed, stepping beside Maya, his hand finding hers. "It's not. But standing here making threats at my wedding? That's not strategy, Kellen. That's desperation, and desperate men make mistakes." Voss looked between them. Damien cold and controlled, Maya fierce and unflinching, and something in his expression shifted. Not surrender, but recalculation. A predator recognizing that his prey had developed teeth. "Enjoy your honeymoon," Voss said finally. "I hear the mortality rate for newlyweds in our business is quite high." He turned and left, his exit theatrical and threatening. The moment he disappeared through the doors, the ballroom erupted in whispered conversations, speculation, barely concealed excitement at the drama they'd witnessed. Damien pulled Maya close, his lips against her ear. That was either incredibly brave or monumentally stupid. Maybe both. Maya was shaking now, adrenaline crashing. "But I meant what I said. He's losing. He's also more dangerous now than ever." But Damien's arms tightened around her. "You just humiliated him in front of Boston's power structure. He won't forget that." "Good." Maya pulled back to meet his eyes. "Let him remember that I'm not just your pretty accessory. I'm your partner, your wife, and I bite back." Something like pride flickered across Damien's face. Yes, you do. The rest of the reception passed without incident, but the energy had shifted. People looked at Maya differently now, not as Damien's convenient trophy, but as someone formidable in her own right, someone who'd stood up to Kellen Voss and lived to tell about it. When they finally escaped to the waiting car, exhausted and overwhelmed, Maya kicked off her heels and let her head fall back against the leather seat. "We're actually married," she said, staring at the platinum band on her finger. "Legally and publicly." Damien loosened his bow tie. "How does it feel?" "Surreal. Terrifying. Like I just signed a contract in blood instead of ink." "You did." He turned to look at her, his expression serious. "Maya, what you said to Voss, you know that makes you an even bigger target now, right? You painted yourself as my actual partner, not just decoration. That means he'll come at you harder." "I know." Maya met his gaze steadily. "But hiding behind you wasn't keeping me safe anyway. At least this way, I'm choosing how I fight." "You really have transformed." Damien's hand found hers, his thumb tracing the wedding band. "The scared college student who walked into my office is completely gone. Isn't she?" "Not gone. Evolved." Maya laced her fingers through his. "She had to. The world you dragged me into doesn't allow for scared college students. I'm sorry for dragging you into it, for making you into this." "Are you?" Maya studied his face in the dim light of the car. "Because I'm not sure I am anymore. What I was before, that girl was going to spend her life building beautiful things for other people's dreams. Safe, predictable, small. What I am now." She paused, trying to find words for the transformation. "I'm terrified most of the time, but I'm also more alive than I've ever been. More myself somehow, even though I'm performing a role." "That's the dangerous part," Damien said quietly. "When the performance becomes who you are, when the lines blur so much you can't find your way back to the person you used to be." "Maybe I don't want to go back." Maya turned to face him fully. "Maybe that person was always going to be too small for what I could become. You didn't make me into this, Damien. You just gave me a reason to become it." He kissed her then. Not for show, not for witnesses. Just the two of them in the back of a car driving through the city they both fought to control. It was desperate and honest and tasted like truth instead of performance. When they separated, Damien rested his forehead against hers. "I'm falling in love with you. Actually falling, not performing it. And that terrifies me more than anything Voss could do." "Why?" "Because love makes you vulnerable. It gives your enemies a weapon they can use to destroy you. Every person I've ever cared about became a target or a liability. I swore I'd never let that happen again. And then I showed up. And then you showed up." His smile was sad and genuine. "Brave and brilliant, and so determined to survive that you turned yourself into someone who could stand beside me instead of just behind me. How am I supposed to not fall for that?" Maya's throat felt tight. "The contract says 5 years. After that, I'm supposed to walk away. We both are." "Fuck the contract." Damien's voice was rough. 5 years? 50 years? I don't care anymore. Whatever this is between us, it's real, and I'm done pretending otherwise." "Damien, I know the power dynamic is still fucked. I still own your contract. Your father's safety still depends on our arrangement. But Maya..." He cupped her face, his eyes intense. "If you wanted to leave tomorrow, I'd let you go. I'd tear up the contract, ensure your father stayed safe, give you everything you'd need to build whatever life you wanted. Because keeping you here if you don't want to be here, that's not love. That's just another cage." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. "You mean that?" "I've never meant anything more in my life." "Then I choose to stay." The words came out clear and certain. "Not because of the contract, not because of my father. Because somewhere between the performances and the violence and the late-night strategy sessions, I started falling for the man underneath the monster. And I want to see where that goes." They kissed again, sealing a choice that was finally, genuinely theirs. But Kellen Voss had other plans. The attacks came hard and fast over the next 2 weeks. A shipment of illegal weapons intercepted by police, someone had tipped them off, and the connection to Damien's organization was too obvious to ignore. 3 of his nightclubs raided on trumped-up violations, the media coverage painting him as a criminal hiding behind legitimate businesses. Financial pressure applied through channels Voss had been quietly building, threatening to collapse deals that kept Damien's empire liquid. He's going scorched earth, Marcus reported during an emergency meeting. Burning bridges, calling in favors, spending resources he can't afford to spend. This isn't strategy anymore. It's suicide by proxy. He's trying to force me into a mistake, Damien said, studying the reports with exhausted eyes. Push me until I lash out publicly. Do something that exposes the criminal operations beyond plausible deniability. Or he's trying to bankrupt you before you can solidify your position, Maya added, seeing the pattern Marcus might have missed. Every legitimate business he damages, every deal he poisons, that's future income you're losing. He's betting that even if you win the criminal war, you'll lose the legitimate empire that makes you untouchable. Damien looked at her with something like wonder. You're right. He's attacking on two fronts, and we've been so focused on the criminal side we've neglected the legitimate defense. So we split our attention, Maya said. Marcus handles the street-level war. You focus on protecting the legitimate businesses. You'll stay safe, Damien interrupted. Voss is escalating. That means he's more dangerous, not less. I'll help, Maya corrected firmly. I have ideas about the financial attacks. Ways to counter them using legal channels Voss can't touch. She spent the next 72 hours proving it, working with Damien's lawyers and accountants to build firewalls around his legitimate holdings, creating legal structures that isolated the businesses from the criminal operations, ensuring that even if Voss succeeded in exposing Damien's darker dealings, the restaurants and real estate and investment firms would survive untainted. It was exhausting, complex work that had nothing to do with violence and everything to do with the strategic mind Maya had always possessed. Damien watched her orchestrate corporate defense with the same appreciation he'd shown for her tactical planning, and Maya realized this was the partnership she'd unknowingly been building toward, not just standing beside him in firefights, but matching him in every arena where battles were fought. The final confrontation came on a Tuesday night when intelligence suggested Voss would be personally overseeing a major shipment at the fortified pier warehouse he'd been using as his new base. It was too obvious, too convenient, clearly a trap designed to lure Damien into a confrontation that would end with one of them dead. We're not taking the bait, Marcus said firmly. Sir, this is exactly what he wants. You show up, there's a firefight, police conveniently arrive, and suddenly you're arrested for weapons trafficking with enough evidence to actually make charges stick. Or I don't show up and look weak, Damien countered. Let him operate freely while I hide behind lawyers and legitimate businesses. There's a third option. Maya's voice cut through the argument. We spring the trap differently. Let him think you're coming, draw out his forces, then hit him where he's actually vulnerable instead of where he expects you. What do you mean? Damien's eyes sharpened. Maya pulled up property records she'd been studying. Voss's warehouse fortress is impressive, but maintaining it requires enormous cash flow, utilities, payroll for all those guards, equipment. I've been tracking his financial movements. Most of his liquid assets are stored in a single location while the warehouse gets all the attention. Where? A storage facility in Cambridge, registered under a shell company, barely guarded because everyone assumes the warehouse is his primary vault. Maya highlighted the location on a map. He's been too focused on building his fortress to properly defend his actual treasure. Damien studied the intelligence, his expression shifting from skepticism to predatory interest. How sure are you? 90%, maybe 95%. Maya met his eyes. It's a risk, but if I'm right, we can take everything that matters while he's staging his dramatic showdown at an empty warehouse. Marcus looked between them, something like respect dawning on his face. It's brilliant. Insane, but brilliant. Then we do both, Damien decided. Marcus, take a team to the warehouse. Make it look like I'm there. Draw Voss and his forces into position. Meanwhile, I'll hit the storage facility with a smaller team. I'm coming with you, Maya said before anyone could argue. Maya, I found the target. I know the facility layout, and you promised we were partners. She crossed her arms. So either I come, or you can explain why you're suddenly shutting me out after letting me into everything else. Damien's jaw clenched, but he nodded. Fine, but you follow my orders exactly. No improvising, no heroics. Says the man who defines heroics. I'm serious, Maya. So am I. They moved that night. Marcus's team created a convoy that looked exactly like Damien's usual security detail, complete with the right vehicles and enough of a presence to draw attention. Intelligence suggested Voss took the bait, his forces mobilizing toward the warehouse for what he believed would be the final confrontation. Meanwhile, Damien and Maya approached the Cambridge storage facility with just 4 people. Minimal team, maximum efficiency. The building was industrial and anonymous, the kind of place that could hide anything behind rolling metal doors and security keypads. 2 guards at the front, whispered Joel from his surveillance position. 1 roaming patrol. Interior unknown. Maya, you're sure this is it? Damien's eyes were hard, focused. As sure as I can be without a signed confession. She pulled up the documentation on her tablet. But look at the payment records. Utilities for a space this size shouldn't cost what Voss is paying monthly. Unless he's running climate control for something valuable, like cash reserves that would mold in normal humidity. Damien's smile was brief and fierce. Good enough. Joel, you and Derek handle the guards. Maya and I go in, fast and clean. What followed was nothing like the chaotic violence of the warehouse raid. This was surgical precision, guards neutralized with suppressed weapons, security systems bypassed, using codes Marcus's intelligence network had acquired, entry achieved through a side door that barely made a sound. Inside the storage facility was a warren of units rented under fake names, lit by fluorescent lights that hummed and flickered. Maya navigated using the records she'd memorized, leading them deeper into the building while Joel and Derek secured their exit route. Unit 247 was locked with both a keypad and a physical deadbolt. Damien made short work of both, and when the door rolled up, it revealed exactly what Maya had predicted. Stacks of cash in waterproof cases, drugs in vacuum-sealed packages, weapons in locked crates, and records that probably detailed every illegal transaction Voss had conducted for the past 5 years. You beautiful, brilliant woman, Damien breathed. This is everything. His operating capital, his product inventory, evidence that could destroy him even if we chose not to use it. So we take it all, Maya said. Burn his empire from the inside out. They worked fast, loading duffel bags with cash and the most damaging records, photographing everything else for insurance. Maya found herself moving with practiced efficiency, her fear subordinated to focus, her moral objections to theft and violence lost somewhere in the transformation from innocent student to criminal's wife. They were loading the last bags when Maya heard it, footsteps approaching fast, multiple people, the distinctive sound of weapons being readied. We've got company, Joel's voice crackled over the radio. Unknown number. They came from the back. Must have been a secondary security team we missed. Damien swore viciously. Fall back to the vehicles. We'll... No time, Derek interrupted. They're between us and the exit. They were trapped. Voss might have fallen for the warehouse diversion, but he'd been smart enough to leave protection on his actual valuables. And now that protection was converging on their location with clear intent to kill. Defensive positions, Damien ordered, his voice calm despite the danger. We hold this room until we can break through. They barricaded themselves in the storage unit, using the heavy cases as cover, weapons trained on the door. Maya's heart hammered, but her hands were steady as she checked her pistol. She'd been in worse situations. She'd survived worse odds. The attack came in a storm of gunfire and flashbangs. The storage unit's metal walls turned into a killing box, bullets ricocheting with lethal unpredictability. Maya returned fire with the precision Joel had drilled into her, dropping one attacker, then another, her mind coldly calculating angles and sightlines while her body moved on trained instinct. Beside her, Damien fought with brutal efficiency, each shot deliberate and deadly. But they were outnumbered, pinned down, running out of ammunition. There! Maya spotted it through the chaos, a ventilation grate high on the back wall, large enough to crawl through. The ductwork, it might connect to other units or lead outside. Too small for all of us, Damien assessed instantly, but you could fit. I'm not leaving you. You're getting to safety and calling for backup. Damien grabbed her arm, his eyes fierce. Maya, listen to me. This is not negotiable. You're my wife, and I will not watch you die in some goddamn storage unit. You go. Now. Damien, that's an order. He physically lifted her toward the grate, boosting her up. Go! Derek, help her! Derek pried open the grate, while Joel and Damien laid down covering fire. Maya wanted to protest, to fight, to refuse to abandon them. But she understood strategy. Understood that her survival meant potential rescue, while staying meant they all died together. She crawled into the ductwork, the metal cold and narrow, Derek pushing her forward while gunfire echoed behind them. The duct system was a maze of turns and branches, but Maya's architectural training paid off. She could visualize the building's structure. map their route to potential exits. They emerged in an empty storage unit 3 sections over, gasping and bruised. Derek immediately pulled out his phone, calling for the backup team that had been waiting on standby. Maya grabbed his radio, establishing contact with Marcus. "We're pinned at the warehouse," Marcus reported. "Voss showed up personally with half his army. We're holding, but we can't extract without heavy casualties." "Copy that," Derek replied. "Boss is pinned at the storage facility. We need—" "I'm going back," Maya interrupted. She grabbed a weapon from Derek's duffel. "Call in whatever reinforcements you have. I'm not letting Damien die alone." "Miss Carter, that's—" But Maya was already moving, retracing their path through the building. She could hear the firefight continuing, fewer shots now, either because ammunition was running low or because people were dying. She moved fast and quiet, using everything Marcus had taught her about tactical approach. The storage unit where she'd left Damien was a war zone. Bodies littered the floor, Voss's men mostly, but Joel was down, bleeding from a wound in his leg. Damien had taken a position behind the largest stack of cases, his shirt soaked with blood from a shoulder wound, his ammunition clearly almost depleted, and advancing toward him with murderous intent was Kellen Voss himself, flanked by 2 remaining guards. "It ends tonight, Crow," Voss was saying, his gun trained on Damien. "Your empire, your life, your pretty little wife will learn what happens to women who marry monsters." Maya didn't think, didn't hesitate, just aimed and fired 3 shots that dropped both guards before they could react. Voss spun, his face contorting with rage when he saw her. "You!" he snarled. "You're supposed to be dead." "I'm supposed to be a lot of things," Maya said, her weapon steady on his center mass. "Scared, helpless, compliant. But you know what I actually am?" She moved forward, placing herself between Voss and Damien. "I'm the woman who just destroyed your entire operation. I found your vault. I mapped your finances. I gave my husband every piece of intelligence he needed to dismantle everything you built. You're a child playing dress-up in a world you don't understand. I'm the woman who's about to kill you." Maya's finger tightened on the trigger. "Any last words?" Voss's smile was ugly. "You don't have it in you. You're not a killer, little girl. You're—" The explosion that followed wasn't Maya's gun. It was much, much bigger. The sound of the entire warehouse Voss had fortified going up in flames. The explosion so massive it shook the storage facility's walls and sent dust raining from the ceiling. Voss's face went white. No, that's everything, all my operations. The new headquarters. I had people there. You had a trap there." Damien's voice came from behind Maya, rough but steady. "And Marcus just sprung it. Your fortress? It's rubble now. Your people? Scattered or dead. Your empire." He smiled through blood and exhaustion. "Ash!" Voss screamed, an animal sound of rage and loss, and raised his weapon. Maya fired first. 3 shots, center mass, exactly as she'd been taught. Kellen Voss, the man who'd shot at her, threatened her, made her a target, fell backward, his eyes already going glassy with death. Maya stood over his body, weapon still raised, her hands perfectly steady. "It's done," Damien said quietly, appearing at her side. "It's over, Maya. You can lower the weapon." She did slowly, the enormity of what she'd just done settling over her like a shroud. She'd killed a man. Not in the chaos of self-defense during a raid, but coldly, deliberately, to protect what was hers. And she didn't feel guilty. She felt powerful. "We need to move," Derek said from the doorway, Joel leaning on him for support. "Police will be responding to that explosion. We've got maybe 5 minutes before this area is swarming with badges." They grabbed what they could carry and fled into the night, leaving Voss's body and his shattered empire behind them. The warehouse explosion lit the sky orange, visible from miles away, a funeral pyre for a criminal dynasty that had finally overextended itself. The aftermath took weeks to sort through. Voss's organization collapsed without his leadership, fractured into a dozen smaller operations that either folded or got absorbed by other players. The police investigation into the warehouse explosion focused on gang warfare and criminal rivalry, never connecting it to Damien Crow, the respected businessman who'd been attending a charity dinner with his wife that evening, according to airtight alibis. The money and records from Voss's storage unit got quietly distributed, cashed to offshore accounts, evidence destroyed or saved for future leverage. The most damaging information filed away like insurance against uncertain futures. Maya's father completed his rehab program and transitioned to a halfway house, clean and sober for the first time in years, carefully shielded from the knowledge of exactly what his daughter had become to save his life. And Maya herself, she finished her semester with perfect grades, her professors amazed at how she balanced such demanding academic work with being married to one of Boston's most influential businessmen. They didn't know that structural engineering principles translated surprisingly well to identifying weaknesses in criminal empires, or that her late nights were spent in strategy sessions rather than studying. 3 months after Voss's death, Damien found Maya in her favorite room of the mansion, a converted conservatory she'd claimed as a design studio filled with her sketches and models of buildings she dreamed of creating. She was working on something new, her hands moving with confident precision as she shaped a miniature structure from clay and wire. "What are you building?" he asked, moving to stand behind her. "A theater." Maya didn't look up from her work. "There's a historic building downtown, the Paramount. It's been abandoned for 20 years, slowly rotting. Beautiful bones, terrible neglect. I want to restore it. That would cost millions. Then it's fortunate I married a billionaire." Maya finally turned to face him, her smile genuine. "I want to build something beautiful, Damien. Something that lasts, something that proves I can create as well as destroy." Damien studied her creation, seeing the care she'd put into every detail. "You know what restoring that theater means? Public attention, committees and permits, and your name attached to a major project. People will look at you more closely, investigate your background. The fiction we've built about our relationship will face more scrutiny. Let them look." Maya's voice was steady. "What are they going to find? A college student who fell in love with a powerful man and married him, who lost her father to addiction and found purpose in architecture and philanthropy. That's not fiction anymore, Damien. That's just the truth we chose instead of the truth we were assigned. And if someone digs deeper, finds the contract, discovers how this really started..." Maya set down her tools, crossing to him. "Then we tell the truth. That yes, it started as a transaction, but it became something real. That I chose to stay long after I could have left. That you gave me a choice, and I made it freely. I love you." The words came out raw and honest. Not the performance, not the convenient fiction. The real you, brilliant and fierce, and so much stronger than you think you are. "I love you too." Maya reached up to cup his face. The man underneath the monster, the one who's trying to become something better. "I'm not sure I can become better. What I am, what I've done, then don't become better. Become different." She pulled him down into a kiss that tasted like truth and choice, and futures they were building from the ruins of who they used to be. Transfer the criminal operations to people you trust. Focus on the legitimate businesses. Fund the theater restoration, the architecture scholarship, things that build instead of destroy. You don't have to be a saint, Damien. Just be someone who chooses different battles. Over the next year, that's exactly what he did. The criminal empire got quietly dismantled, not abandoned, but distributed, transferred to lieutenants who'd proven their loyalty and capability. Damien kept enough connections to remain powerful, influential, dangerous when needed. But the day-to-day violence, the direct involvement in operations that could destroy everything legitimate he'd built, that got delegated away until his hands were almost clean. The Paramount Theater restoration became Maya's obsession. She worked with historical societies and architects, fought through permit processes and budget overruns, transformed a rotting shell into something magnificent. When it reopened 2 years after Voss's death, the celebration made national news, not for the violence of Boston's criminal underworld, but for the vision of a young architect who'd saved a historic landmark. Maya stood on the stage opening night, Damien beside her, and looked out at the restored beauty she'd created. The audience that night included her father, 4 years sober, working as a counselor at the same rehab facility that had saved his life, along with professors from the university, city officials, and the strange collection of people who'd become her chosen family through violence and transformation. "This is what I was meant to build," she told Damien as the orchestra tuned their instruments for the inaugural performance. "Not just buildings, but a life that matters. A future worth choosing." "And the contract?" Damien asked. He'd been carrying it in his jacket pocket all evening. The 5-year agreement that had started everything and was now 3 weeks from its official expiration date. "Burn it," Maya said simply. "We don't need it anymore." That night, after the celebration ended and they returned to the mansion that had stopped feeling like a cage and started feeling like home, Damien built a fire in his study's fireplace. Maya handed him the contract, that thick document that had bound her life, defined her choices, transformed her from innocent student into something she could never have anticipated becoming. They burned it together, watching the pages curl and blacken and turn to ash. The smoke carried away the weight of obligation, of coercion, of transactions dressed as relationships. What remained was choice, pure and simple and freely given. So what now? Damien asked as the last page disintegrated. We're not bound by contract anymore. You could leave. Build your career anywhere. You have the money, the freedom, the future you earned. I could, Maya agreed. She turned to face him, this man who'd bought her compliance and somehow, impossibly, earned her love instead. Or I could stay. Not because I have to. Not because of threats or obligations or fear, but because this life we've built from ruins and violence and choices we made together, this is what I want. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. Maya pulled him close, her lips finding his in a kiss that tasted like freedom and commitment in equal measure. The contract said 5 years. Let's make it forever. Damien produced a ring box from his jacket, not the diamonds he'd given her for their contractual wedding, but something simpler. A platinum band engraved with the coordinates of where they'd first kissed as husband and wife, the GPS location of a choice that had seemed like performance but became truth. Maya Carter Crow, he said, sinking to one knee in a proposal that was 3 years late but infinitely more meaningful than the first. Will you marry me? Actually marry me, not for show or contracts or saving your father, just because we chose each other and want to keep choosing each other for whatever time we have left. Maya didn't hesitate. Yes. They married again 6 months later, a small ceremony with only the people who knew their real story, witnessed by Marcus and Joel and her father and the strange collection of people who'd become family through fire and transformation. No performance this time, no audience to convince, just 2 people who'd found each other in the worst possible way, and somehow, impossibly, built something real from the wreckage. Maya continued building theaters and community centers and affordable housing projects that transformed neighborhoods. Her career became distinguished not despite her past, but because of it, because she understood on a fundamental level what it meant to reconstruct something beautiful from ruins. Damien continued evolving, never becoming innocent, never washing away the blood on his hands, but choosing different battles, building different legacies, becoming someone who wielded power for creation as often as destruction. And together they built a life that neither could have imagined the day Maya walked into a penthouse office terrified and desperate, offering anything to save her father, a life chosen freely. A love earned through fire and violence and the slow, painful work of transformation. Years later, when people asked how they'd met, Maya and Damien would smile and tell a version of the truth, that he'd offered her a deal she couldn't refuse, and she'd accepted it, and somewhere between the performance and the reality, they'd fallen in love for real. The full truth, the contracts and the violence, the warehouse raids, and the man she'd killed, the empire built on crime slowly transformed into something almost legitimate that stayed between them. A shared history of darkness that made the light they'd built together that much more precious. On their 10th anniversary, standing on the mansion's terrace overlooking gardens that had witnessed a decade of transformation, Maya turned to Damien with a smile that held no performance, no calculation, just honest joy. No regrets? She asked. Damien pulled her close, his arms around her waist, his expression peaceful in a way that would have been impossible the day they'd met. Only that I didn't find you sooner, and that I didn't deserve you when I did. You still don't deserve me, Maya teased. But you choose to try every day. That's what matters. Forever, Damien promised, echoing the vow they'd made to each other 3 years after the contract burned. For as long as we both shall live. Forever, Maya agreed, sealing it with a kiss that tasted like choice and love and futures built from the ashes of who they used to be. The girl who'd been forced into a cage had transformed it into a kingdom. The monster who'd bought her compliance had learned to love without conditions, and together they'd proven that even the worst beginnings could be rewritten into stories worth telling, not fairy tales. Real life was too complicated, too violent, too morally ambiguous for fairy tales. But something better. A love story built on truth and choice and the hard, painful work of becoming people worthy of each other. And in the end, that was enough.